Welcome back to Northern Perspective, everybody. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Tanya.
And this is Committee Live Stream.
It sure is.
It's been a while since we've done
has been,
Committee Live
yep.
Stream. Trying to remember what the last subject really was. It might have been it was either the condo or it was the SDTC scandal. It was one of those.
I think it was the condo.
So, but for those of you that are new to committee, you're in for a treat. I think, anyway. This is kind of our bread and butter, and it's really, I think, what initially made the channel
Take off.
Yeah.
It's what we love doing, and we hope you'll enjoy it too.
And this is where you learn the most about how your government actually operates. So for those of you that are new, welcome. And for those of you that are committee veterans all the way back to the chalet of ArriveCan, welcome back. And I see many veterans in the chat. Anyway, folks, before we get any further, house rules.
So it's going to be the same 3 house rules as all of our live streams. Number 1 is please respect each other and the show. Number 2, no selling, soliciting, or spamming in the chat. And number 3, please don't use profanity. We do get feedback every now and then that kids like to watch, which is awesome because we want informed voters. We want children learning about their government. So please keep the swear words to a minimum. Right now, for moderators, we have Cujo from Northern Perspective, and we will have Barnaby joining us shortly. I will also be doing some moderating this evening. So because we're a little bit short on moderators, there's going to be a low tolerance for rule breaking in the chat. We may not warn you. We may just mute you. So please try to follow those 3 rules and we won't have any issues.
And Jester may show up at some point. We'll see. He is working tonight at his real job, but we'll see what happens. So anyway, folks, it's going to be fun, I think. I have not watched the entirety of this committee. I know pieces here and there. I've trimmed it down so there's as few liberals as possible. So that's a good thing. So what was 2 hours, I've managed to get down all the way to about an hour 6. So hopefully that's going to be pretty tolerable for everybody. We're not going to be going to 1 in the morning unless there's a lot of commentary, which I don't think there's going to be a lot of commentary, but we'll see. When it comes to the other committee live stream rules, we will not be taking submitted questions in chat, just so you know, because we do need to keep the live stream moving along so we don't get bogged down. And what we will be doing is hitting super chats a little bit throughout the live stream after each clip that we provide some commentary to. But then once committee is over, we will finish with the balance of the super chats and then finish up the night. So this should be a good one. This is focused on the 2025 Elections Canada report on the 2025 federal election that happened on April 28th, as we all know. So there may be some references to the Battle River Crowfoot by-election, but it's not going to be too focused on that. It's going to be mainly focused on the 2025 federal election.
So this is the report that Elections Canada puts out after every electoral event. This is the one for the general election that was back in April. As far as I know, they're still working on the one for Battle River Crowfoot, but after any by-election, general election, etc., they look and see, okay, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? What can we do better, etc.
So, folks, if you don't mind, hit that like button. We are 600 likes behind. We only have a third of people in chat that have liked the stream. Let's push this out. Make sure we get those YouTube points, as we say, and that will allow other Canadians to see that the live stream is on, and it will allow other members of NP Nation to see that the live stream is on tonight. So that would be great. Let's get through some of the pre-chat activity.
Before we do that, we want to say good evening to our friend who is in the hospital tonight. He's okay, but it sucks being in the hospital, so we just wanted to give him a shout out.
Especially with the high-quality Canadian healthcare, right? Right? Yes, I know you're chuckling now.
So we hope he's watching.
Anyhow, Jacob Park, welcome back to NTP Supporter. Thank you very much. Don Greer, welcome back as well. Thank you. Dan H. for $20, introducing the newest Liberal talking point. We don't need to seek a deal with the U.S. because we already have the best trade deal, but all of our problems are the result of the U.S. tariffs. Please make this nonsense stop. Well, there you go. There's Jim for you.
Oh, come on!
And we have Randy Plett for a $25 Super Hippo. Thank you very, very much for that. Alice Avonlea for $2. Israel Chai. And Rabu Sadies for $5. Finally had enough and actually wrote my MP about C8 and C9 because they would put me on another list for buying C4. Yeah, they would. Yeah, they would. That's whether or not C8 and C9 actually go through.
I was just going to say, I think that's illegal.
Yeah. Trish Perul for $2.79. The world is tight again. Committee, or maybe right. That's what she probably means. The world is right again. Committee time. Because I know Trish loves committee. Okay, folks. Let's shoot on over to committee watch mode. Hopefully I still have it here. There we go. And just making sure audio is good. Looks like audio is good. That's a Liberal chair, folks. For those that do not know, the Liberals chair all committees except for 3. Which ones are they, Tanya?
It's OGO, ethics, and is finance the last one?
Nope. Close. Standing Committee for Public Accounts.
Right.
Public Accounts.
Right.
And that's because those are the 3 committees where the opposition is able to hold the government to account. They are always chaired by a member of the opposition.
Of the official opposition.
Of the official opposition. Yeah. So, OGO, you have Kelly McCauley, who is... that seat has been very warm for him for a long time. And you have John Broussard for the Ethics Committee, and you have John Williamson for the Standing Committee of Public Accounts. Phenomenal chairs. Patience of a saint, all 3 of them.
All 3 of them, yeah.
I
don't know how they don't lose their collective minds sometimes.
Well, we love John Broussard and John Williamson because you can see their faces get more red as they...
they give you the look and you know you've crossed the line, or at least you should know you've crossed the line.
We've heard some almost eruptions from John Broussard, we heard a minor eruption from John Williamson, both, I think, in response to Iker Khalid in the last session. But she is nowhere to be found on these committees this time. So, anyway, folks, we're not going to show you the opening statement of Stéphane Perreault. This is Stéphane Perreault, the Chief Electoral Officer of Elections Canada. For those of you that may not recall, we reported on him in our longest ballot coverage. He was pleading with the Liberal government in the last session to change the rules to prevent the longest ballot from actually being able to operate. So he was actually speaking up. He wrote a letter in, I believe it was
November, maybe?
I think it was October.
So about a year ago.
To Dominic LeBlanc. Didn't hear anything back. Then appeared in committee in November when they were discussing the potential Electoral Reform Act, but that never ended up materializing because we had an election. So there we go. And one last, or a couple last things here. We have a membership drop from Lost Art. Thank you very, very much. And congratulations to Wendy M., who received that. And we have Revisays for $5. Wait, if the Conservatives get in, the Liberal would chair the Ethics Committee. How is that even possible? They don't have any. Well, that's the irony. That's the irony. So, well, you're assuming they're going to form the official opposition. So who knows? Maybe the Bloc will.
It's happened once before.
It has. It absolutely has. All right. Here we go, folks. We are back to committee.
Cooper for 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Perreault. Thank you, Mr. Roussel. Good to see both of you. I'm going to ask Mr. Perreault you some questions about the so-called longest ballot committee, which you reference in your report. In the last election, this group targeted the Carleton riding, although prior to the last election, they targeted several by-elections, and then later targeted the Battle River Crowfoot riding in the recent by-election, with a total of 91 candidates in Carleton, a record 203 candidates in Battle River Crowfoot. Would you agree, broadly speaking, that the committee's tactic to flood the ballot with an endless list of candidates had a overall disruptive and negative impact on the electoral process in Carleton, in the prior by-elections, and in Battle River Crowfoot?
Certainly, it did have such an impact, and it was a challenge for a number of voters, especially those with disabilities, to be able to cast their ballot with such a long list of electors. And that is why, Mr. Chair, I've come to this committee in the past and recommended some changes to make sure that this can be addressed.
And just to sort of flesh out some of the challenges that this committee created. You referred to voters with disabilities. That would include voters with visual impairments, mobility issues, literacy challenges. Would that be correct?
I would include as well voters with dexterity to handle such a large ballot. People who are physically impaired, who have limitations, would also face a challenge.
So it negatively impacted on voter autonomy.
That is that's what we find, yes.
And further to that, in the Carleton riding, it resulted in longer lineups at the polls.
It certainly resulted in longer lineups. Of course, much longer processes to count the ballots, as we're aware. We had to advance the count for 3 hours for the advanced polls count during that day, and the count extended throughout the night.
All right, folks. So this is at the core of the problem with the longest ballot. And as Tanya will show you...
You're going to have to switch back to the other view first.
Yeah, because it won't fit.
It's not going to fit on that screen, look. Whoop. Sorry for everybody just hitting my mic, but this is the Carleton ballot. You can see how big it is. This I printed true to life, so this has the, what was it, 91 candidates on it. It's huge.
Yeah.
Like, I'm able to roll it up and deal with it, but when you are voting, you can't just roll it up like this. You have to fold it and fold it and fold it and fold it and then stuff it in the ballot box. So if you have, say, arthritis and you're having a difficult time manipulating your ballot, what are you going to do? I don't believe that the workers can really help you fold the ballot. So, like, it creates an issue.
Well, and the other issue is that the cost of these is far greater than what they would normally use for a regular ballot.
Well, and when I had this printed, now it was just one, and I had it printed at Staples, true to size, and it was about $12, and then I cut it down, because I think I had it printed, I want to say 36 by 24 inches, and then I just like trimmed off the excess white. But when you're having these done, they're done on special paper. They're also done, what do you want to call it, on like security paper at a secure facility, so that people can't duplicate these, and so that you don't have people who work at the printing press, for example, trying to smuggle out ballots and do things like that, right? So it's done very securely. I imagine it would be quite expensive to print something like this.
Indeed. But before we get back to this, we're just going to touch on a couple of administrative items that came in. Actually, just Brenda R. Dropping 10 Northern Perspective memberships. Thank you very, very much. Anything else, or is that it?
I think that's
Okay.
it. We're caught up.
Perfect.
But we're not caught up on likes, so please make sure you hit that like button for us.
So we gained 400 likes and gained almost 400 viewers. See how that works? Get the likes up, folks, so we can advertise this stream out to more and more Canadians. Alrighty, back we go.
And in Battle River Crowfoot riding, it necessitated the adoption of an adapted ballot. And I presume that also created its challenges. Is that fair for certain voters?
Certainly, voters, for example, who would use the Braille list to cast a ballot would have a different experience. So yes, it does create challenges. Electors with low literacy or people who have difficulty writing, manipulating a pen or pencil may find that to be challenging. I think from my perspective, one of the important point also is the fact that it requires me to set aside the rules that Parliament has passed for the format of the ballot. And that's something, of course, that I had to do to make sure the election could proceed. But as I said before this committee, it's not something that I do lightly. And that's why I hesitated before moving to a write-in ballot format, which is a greater variation from what is prescribed in the legislation.
Now, you mentioned that you had recommended some amendments to the Canada Elections Act. I know that in September 2024, following disruptions that occurred in by-elections, you wrote to the then Minister of Democratic Institutions, Dominic LeBlanc, to express your concerns about the impact of the longest ballot committee and proposed an amendment to the Canada Elections Act. Did you receive a response from the minister?
I'd just like to, Mr. Chair, to also mention that I shared, of course, that recommendation with the committee as well. It wasn't just to the minister. In terms of a commitment to make the changes, I did not receive a commitment to make that change.
Now, that recommendation was what? Just if you could elaborate on that.
So my recommendation was to ensure that the 100 signatures that are currently required, a bit less in some of the remote ridings, low-density ridings, that the 100 signatures be unique signatures. That a person, and I believe that is the philosophy of the legislation, though not the letter, that a person who endorses the nomination of a candidate endorses the nomination of that particular candidate and not just any candidate, whoever that candidate may be. And I believe that that is the approach of the longest ballot committee signators, that they endorse anybody and everybody who wishes to be part of the long ballot initiative. So I don't think that's aligned with the spirit of the legislation. I also caution, however, that the requirement, should it be implemented, the requirement to have unique signatures should be something which may carry a fine, for example. Could be a few $100s, could be $1,000, but should not be caused to invalidate a nomination. As a candidate, the candidate would not know that a signature, a good faith candidate, would not know that somebody has signed on to somebody else's nomination paper. And the last thing that we would want is to have returning officers having to verify the 100 signatures to chase down, the potential double signatures, which may be in good faith. It may be somebody who was confused and wanted to be supportive, didn't understand the rules. But we don't want, certainly, a candidate nomination to be questioned just because one of the 100 names happened to be in somebody else's nomination paper as well. So my recommendation was that there be a prohibition for double signatures, a prohibition on inducing or encouraging people to do that, accompanied by sanctions. Again, it could be a fine, but without such a rule invalidating the nomination of any candidate. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, unless the candidate induced himself or herself.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Madame Norbander, 6 minutes.
Okay, so
I think this was on our petition, was it not?
It was
100 unique signatures. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, and I think we may have received that initial idea from Stefan Perot's testimony back in committee. So I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I was gonna say it wasn't an original idea that we came up with, but we did include it on the petition.
Right.
Yeah.
And I hope at some point they get into the fact that the longest ballot is acting like a party. I don't think they're going to get into it today, but I hope at some point as they continue down this path, I hope they really get into that, because they literally are acting like a party. When you've centralized communication, when you're managing candidates, and they're all allegedly running under the same platform. Ladies and gentlemen, what is that called? That's called a party.
Well, and that's it. It's like, you could do that with any party, say the Liberals, for example. You could have two candidates and be like, oh, you guys just register as independents and, this will be your platform and we'll have like twice a shot at getting this than we would normally. Like, you can't do that.
Yeah. It's insane.
Yeah, you can't.
But we'll see what happens as this continues to unfold. No doubt this isn't going to be the only meeting they're going to be talking about the longest ballot or the election. But but we'll see what happens. But I see Stefan Perot's point in terms of if they have to validate the duplication, because they do spend some time on validating signatures now in terms of like, are they actually Canadian citizens and residents of the riding and whatnot. But to look over the different documents, that would cause some definite overhead if you had to validate that one person didn't sign multiple nomination papers.
My opinion on that is that that's just an excuse. Safeguarding our democracy, to me, there's no price that's too high. And if they have to hire somebody to do data entry and then put in all the names, put in all the addresses, etc., of the people who have signed on for a particular candidate and cross-check it against another candidate, to me, that's money well spent.
I'll accept that. Okay. So we have Jessica Van Luke with a $28 super chat. Thank you very, very much. What are your thoughts on the ostriches? The fact that some influencers like Mr. Sunshine are throwing tantrums because Poilievre refuses to talk about it and wants him to resign as leader because of it. It is ridiculous. I'll just come out and say, I agree with you.
Yeah, I think, honestly, if you are upset with Poilievre for doing what we've suggested, and I'm not saying like, oh, he's listening to us, it's our suggestion, but he's doing what we've been saying he should do all along, which is showcase his talent in his party. So he has Scott Anderson handling this, who seems very capable and able to do it. And I mean, you've been a leader before. When you assign something, when you delegate something to somebody, you don't then just go over their head and be like, oh, by the way, I'm going to make it all about me, or I'm going to come in and make a statement.
Yeah. And the fact that the whole decision on Pierre Poilievre's leadership should be subject to what's going on at an ostrich farm versus Canada's economy going into the tank, our justice system having massive problems, our election being under question, our housing going down the toilet, immigration being a problem. Like, there are so many massive issues affecting this company, and the fact that, and the fact that people are out there and influencers are saying that Poilievre should resign over this.
Well, I think you're right.
I got nothing.
I think you're right, Jessica, in that these people are throwing tantrums, and I think that people saying this don't understand how party politics works, and they also don't understand what it means to be part of a team and to lead a team.
So, in terms of our stance on it, so we've received a lot of questions on this. We haven't put anything out because, as we always say, we're not going to put something out unless we know we have all the facts, and we've seen a lot of different facts that call a lot of things into question. So we're still reviewing everything, but
well, and the documents that we're reviewing are long. The initial court document was over, what was it? It was around 150 pages long. The Health of Animals Act is, I don't even know how many pages long. This isn't just a simple thing that we can just say like, hey, here's my opinion, because you guys don't come to Northern Perspective for an opinion. You come to Northern Perspective for the facts.
There's also agreements that we're reviewing that are international agreements, which is like the picture that's being painted is this is just the Canadian government. No, it's not just the Canadian government. There's international agreements here, and you're starting to see those agreements come into force, with the United States announcing that they are initiating an embargo on all poultry that comes out of British Columbia. So this is not a Canada versus a ostrich farm thing. This is a international law, and it's a lot bigger.
It affects a $2 billion industry.
And
Canada is already not permitted to trade with particular countries. The BC farmers, poultry farmers, are not permitted to export their goods anywhere in the province. They're not allowed to export it to certain countries. I think that Taiwan was one of them. I want to say that is Taiwan. Do you remember the countries? There's a few of them.
There's a bunch.
And then all Canadian poultry farmers are not permitted to export their poultry products to other countries, including China, just because there is what they consider an active case. Now, we're both animal lovers, and our opinion is that this is a horrible situation. My heart just breaks for the farmers, but in terms of giving the audience a proper breakdown video,
we're not ready to do that.
We're not ready yet.
So that's that. We're being careful as we always are. So I hope everyone can understand that. Okay, let's get back to this, because everyone tuned in to talk about Elections Canada and not the ostriches.
S'il vous plaît.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur
We have 6
Perrault.
minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Perrault and Mr. Roussel, for coming here today and to talk about improving things in the future. So we know that everything can be improved, and we'll be working with you to do that. I would ask a question about the special ballots. In your report, on page 22 and 23, 24, you talk about statistics for the 44th general election and the 45th. So I don't need to say more about it as an introduction. We see that there are percentages of votes returned that goes between 3 to 7%. So it's hard to say that there's a 100% report. There are always ballots that don't come to us or are late. So we can presume from one year to the next for different reasons. The ballots that aren't returned can vary. There can be variations. The good news is that to date we had a good improvement with the different types of special ballots used. Even from other countries and local, there were fewer ballots that weren't returned late and fewer that were not returned. So when somebody realizes that there's an error on the address on these ballots, can that official?
I would like to apologize to everybody for having to listen to this translator. She's terrible. I don't know if she has a cold, but I'm not in favor of this translator at all.
I miss the South African guy. He was so good.
Oh, he's still around.
Oh, is he? I haven't heard him in a long time.
I think they've just, I guess they rotate the
shuffle them
translators around. So
I know they do that with the pages. They shuffle them around between different duties in the house. So yeah, I guess it makes sense to do that with the translators.
And I keep forgetting interpreters, not
yes,
translators.
Thank you.
Because they don't translate word for word. They translate and then interpret the proper meaning in the proper language and then give that meaning.
Right.
So.
It's like the difference between, I don't know, book and novel, right?
So, and Mega Man Zero for $5. Thank you very, very much. Ostrich Farm is created as a distraction, in my opinion, to divert from their 3 evil bills.
Well, I will say that I found it very suspicious that people started attacking Pierre Poilievre right when, number one, those 3 bills came out. And number 2, when the Conservatives finally have a leg up in the polls, or are starting to get one anyways.
Yeah, it was very strange.
It was strange.
So, anyway, continuing on.
Rest on a historical rate, or just on the fact that there are always ballots that aren't returned, to have a justification to not contact the voters to whom he sent these ballots through these alternate ways of voting. So, Mr. Chair, I'll have to ask your indulgence because we have a process that's in the courts talking about the situation in Terrebonne. It's not a bear trap, as we say, but I don't want to give comments. I think the court will be able to decide on this situation in Terrebonne, and after that it will be easier for me to speak about this. So I think I need to stop here. I understand your reservations and I share them. But I'm asking more in a vision of future projections, so it might not be repeated, and to see whether we should eliminate some justifications that allowed us not to contact people who sent ballots after we saw that there were errors. Is there a justification that you can vote to not contacting voters and inviting them to vote in another way? So when an employee of the poll can see that there was an error and that prevented the voter from exercising the right to vote, we asked for that information to go up to the central administration. And sometimes you can have a local remedy or sometimes something else. There are people who correct errors. Sometimes there are bad instructions that are given, but when we know that, we can address the problem. So you can see in my report that I've mentioned this. It's not just something that's happened in Terrebonne.
Oh my goodness, she's late and then she skips and
then you miss what the response is.
Her voice is not Morgan Freeman. Let's just say that. It's
You know, and I'm going to say Stéphane Perreault sounds different than I imagined he would.
well.
I thought he'd have more of an accent, to be honest.
Yeah, he's very good in both languages. So, given his name, you would expect him to have an accent.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I'm not trying to be mean or nothing,
But the point is that he speaks very well, so this shouldn't be a problem to interpret. So, I don't know why this translator is having so much difficulty interpreting. So,
to be fair, we all have bad days. We all have bad days at work, and it's just those of us who work in front of a camera that everybody knows we're having a bad day.
That's true. That's very, very true. So who knows? But for those of you that are picking up on this, so this is the discussion around the whole issue with at least that one voter, probably more in Terrebonne, that was mailed a ballot with the wrong returning address.
I recall them confirming 5 or 6 ended up in the same situation.
And they're talking about, why can't Elections Canada, why couldn't they just reach out to that voter and try and direct them to vote a different way or something like that? And that's this whole discussion that's going on right now.
Because voting had closed by that point.
Yeah, well, and this is the problem, right? So by the time they realize, oh, oopsie, oh well, my bad. I guess that vote's not happening. Oh well, that's not going to decide an election.
Well, and the other thing is, why couldn't Canada Post just direct it anyways?
Well, let's not talk about Canada Post right now, because that would be a problem.
Sounds good.
So, and as I believe Christine is saying, this problem didn't just happen in Terrebonne. So, Brian Campbell for $20. I totally agree with you guys about the ostrich farm issue. Ryan, I was totally like you about your last video about Parliament, about the bail reform, meaning a frying pan and iPhone 6 don't mix well. LOL, iPhone lost. Oh, an iPhone 6 don't mix well. LOL, iPhone lost. I don't know what you're saying there, Brian.
It's like if you take a frying pan and you smash an iPhone.
Right.
Obviously, the iPhone's not going to win that
battle. A frying pan
battle.
and an iPhone don't mix. Gotcha. Okay. Yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. There we go. And we have Rosés for $5. Here's to the longest ballot for finding the I in team. I mean, the narcissism about how much damage they can do to our electoral process is epic. Yeah, and then they laugh about it and they celebrate it is the problem. Meanwhile, Canadians that have disabilities, you're breaking their charter's rights. Their Charter 3 rights. It's gross. It's absolutely gross. Especially from one of the brothers who fought against the establishment because he said his charter rights were being violated. It's gross. And obviously we see the plan. It was a way to pave the way for no restrictions. They were trying to get no restrictions, obviously, in that initial challenge so they could flood the ballot even easier. So, will Cow check for $5? Can we as Canadians get better translators, please? This is unreal. And smash that like. All gifts on the way. Thank you so much, Will. Thank you very much. I agree. But, we can spend $80 billion into deficit, but we can't have better translators, interpreters.
And about the information that's given to the election workers, are they given in a verbal way principally, or do they have a document where there are instructions as to what to do when there's an error? So there are several challenges. We have to concentrate the information for the election workers, but there is documentation that's shared with the team at the local level, which asks them to raise the alarm and inform problems that don't allow voters to vote properly. So when an error has been observed, the way that one informs one's superiors, is that done verbally or by an informal email? Is there a way? How is the information passed up the chain of command when there's an error? Normally, it's often a situation of urgency when it's an election, so there are verbal reports, but there's also information to document problematic situations. We'll ask an incident report to be made to give all the details possible, but there's always a tension between dealing with the situation quickly and documenting. We try and find a balance between the two, but there are processes for this, and it's quite standardized. I don't know if you want to answer this. Yes, it's relatively standardized. We have a calling center that gathers and documents problems that are raised by returning officers, as Mr. Perrault explained. If ever we are discussing about major incidents that were noted, there's a standard form that's completed about the incident that's sent to Election Canada, which will allow investigation to be carried out.
Okay, so that's all well and good. So they're explaining what sounds like a standard kind of government process. So what I'm hearing here is whenever a returning officer has a problem, they fill out what is normally called an incident form. And this is very common in corporate processes. So they'll fill out just basically what went wrong, who they are, where it happened, and what the issue was. And then they send it off. And then I guess this team will look at it and try and solve the problem. That's all well and good. The problem is that nobody knew this was a problem until after the election was over. That's the problem.
Right, because it got returned something like, didn't she say 5 weeks after she mailed it? Or it was a really long time.
Yeah, it was insane.
Yeah.
It was insane. And what is she supposed to do? That was the tying vote. Now, Election Canada will say, well, there's other processes, and that's where, that's navigating through the courts right now.
Yeah, but look how long it's taking.
Right, and people have been paid money to participate in these recounts. People have been paid money to participate in the review process. People
Usually,
are being paid.
Though, it is brown dollars from what I understand. But it's still like if you have a staffer who's participating in a recount, well, they're spending their day there instead of doing something more productive. You're paying them either way, but their time could be better spent.
And you have someone sitting in a seat in Parliament that may not deserve that seat.
Collecting a paycheck from the taxpayers that may not deserve that paycheck.
Right. A $200,000 a year paycheck. So this isn't just a small problem, right? And this is why we say every vote counts. because this one was decided by one vote.
And there was one of the Windsor ridings was decided by 4 after the judicial recount.
It was a lot. It was a lot. So this is why it's so important. But again, these processes are all well and good, but it doesn't help when they're found after the election and the voter learns after the election's over that their vote wasn't counted. Thank goodness that her vote was actually returned and it wasn't just lost in the mail.
Yes, that's a really good point.
Because you may not actually see the Terrebonne riding go to a legislative challenge at that point, because there's a timeline for that too, right? So thank goodness that they actually got it, and they came forward and said, hello, this didn't go to the right address. Thanks, Canada Post. Make sure I'm not missing anything here. I think we're good.
Mr. Van Popta for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Perot and Mr. Roussel for being here with us. And thank you for a very thorough report on the 45th general election. Interesting reading. And it's an immense undertaking to have a general election in a fair and conclusive manner. But there were some challenges, which you highlight in the report. And I want to talk about one which hits close home to me in the riding of Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam, which is right across the river from my riding of Langley Township, Fraser Heights.
So, folks, for those that may not recall, Coquitlam is where they had that Elections Canada office that they found a box of ballots from across the country. It was the mail-in ballots that never made it back to be counted.
Now, to be fair, and we did a video on this just after the election, but none of those ballots would have altered the ridings, any of the ridings. A lot of it was just like one vote for this riding, one vote for that riding. And it wasn't anything that would have changed the outcome of the election in any of those ridings. But you still want to know as a Canadian that your vote is counted. And they had confirmed that it was because somebody did not follow the standard protocols, and that's why this box got missed.
And just because it didn't alter the result in this election, who knows? It could possibly in the next election, which is why it needs to be resolved.
Well, and again, your job as the returning officer, deputy returning officer, poll staff, etc., is to follow the protocol so stuff like that doesn't happen.
So just to set the context, the special ballots that were cast in that riding by electors who did not live in that riding amounted to 822 ballots, and they were not counted.
They were not counted to be included in the official count because so they will be reflected, except where there are issues with secrecy of the vote. They will be reflected alongside the official count.
Okay, so that's important to know. There were 7 electors in my riding. It wouldn't have made a difference, and your report does highlight that. You say the outcome would not have affected any of the 74 impacted districts, mine being one of them. That is true. There were 7 ballots that were cast by people living in my riding, and happily I won by more than 7 votes. So even if they had all gone the other way, I still would have won. But I want to tell those people your vote actually did count, because that's what I tell everybody. When I'm knocking on doors, they go, "Mr. Van Popta, you're going to win anyways. It doesn't matter if I vote." I go, "It matters a lot.
It matters.
Every vote counts."
Mr. Chair, apologies for interrupting. It matters. I wholeheartedly agree. And to all extent possible, we want to make sure that every valid vote is reflected, is counted. Now, if for some error that happens after validation, that we find out, it cannot be included in the official results. In the case of Coquitlam, a large percentage, I can't remember exactly, of the affected ridings had done their validation when the issue arose, so that was not a possibility. It was nevertheless important to be very transparent about the situation, because some of those ridings were fairly close, not so close that it would have made a difference, but perhaps sufficiently so in the case of a recount. And it was critical that the candidates in those ridings be made aware of the number of votes that potentially would have affected their election, and should they wish to do so, could have raised this in the context of a recount. So after validation, if we find out, we need to be very quick to be transparent to make sure that these rights can be properly exercised.
So what happens if the count if this is discovered after validation? I just need to be clear on that. Would they be, and if the outcome would have been different,
yes,
would it have been a recount, or would you have invalidated the prior validation?
So that's a good question. I don't have, this is not something that we've encountered before. I would be very reluctant, but I won't rule it out, to undo a validation. I think that could be seen as circumventing the remedy in the Act for recounts. My preference would be to make the information available to the court in a recount so that the judge may take into account those votes and leave the court process to determine that. There's a
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Perot. You just gave us something very important.
Well, he's admitting that there is no procedure for this because it hasn't happened before, I guess.
Well, that's not what I'm thinking of.
Oh.
I'm thinking of the upcoming hearings that are occurring on the Terrebonne. That's so what he just told. This is big, folks. This is big. And I don't know who else is watching this that missed it, but
I did.
NP, but we as NP Nation did not, folks. So what he just told us is that I now have a very high degree of confidence that the Terrebonne decision is going to be overturned and having to go to a by-election. Based on what he said. Because what he said is we would, in that situation, talking about the mail-in ballots that came in after the fact or whatever, they would provide that information to the court so the court could make a educated decision on what would have happened in a particular court challenge.
But it's already gone to judicial review, and that's how it ended up with the results that it ended up at. And once a judicial review is completed, it's considered done and over with.
No, but that's where you're saying the court. That's different.
No, a judicial review goes to court.
It goes to a judge.
Like, you mean like the...
I mean the court challenge.
Okay, the one that...
That's what he's talking about.
Okay.
That's what he's talking about. So that information will be provided to the judge, and I now have a very, very high degree of confidence that we're going to see a by-election in Terrebonne based on that. So, thank you very much, Mr. Perot. Much appreciated, sir. That's funny. Kate Does Nature says Ryan the committee whisperer.
Something like that.
Yeah.
You guys are going to love this one.
There we go.
There are several, guardrails and remedies in our system, and that's a good thing. Obviously, we don't like to see contested election, and so the recount or the validations are the two opportunities to make sure that the right candidate has been elected.
I'm going to give you a hypothetical. I'm looking at the 74 ridings, and they're written out in your reports and alphabetically. I looked up Terrebonne just when Ms. Normandin was asking some questions, and it is not listed there. So nobody in Coquitlam voted in the Terrebonne election. But if it had been, what difference would that have made to a declaration in that Quebec riding?
Had that been the case, my hope is that the information being available could have been taken into account by the judge in the recount, so before going to a contested election.
What are you going to do to make sure this never happens again? And what actually did happen? Like a ballot box got lost. How can that possibly happen? So
in the case of Coquitlam, we have a situation where there was confusion about the process. We have a team there that worked provincially and was confused with the different rules. Provincially in BC, the special ballots are sent to the headquarters after the election for the count. Federally, that's not the case. Now, this is something that ought to have been understood. It's very clear in our material, but we will, and we have begun to look at all the controls that can be implemented to make sure that these kinds of errors are picked up immediately and corrected before validation. So I've indicated publicly, Mr. Chair, that we will be introducing changes to our processes.
30 seconds over, but it was an excellent question, and use my prerogative. I would have wanted to hear the answer. So thank you. Mr. Maloney for 5 minutes, please.
Just want to give credit where credit is due. Well done, Chair.
Well, they're supposed to try to be impartial. Being a chair is like training for being the speaker. So you have to practice nonpartisanship.
Yeah, you're supposed to be. This is a Liberal chair, folks, and credit to him. He did not, shut down the question from the Conservative and the line of questioning from the Conservative MP that was drilling into the Terrebonne issue, and which right now a Liberal occupies. So I do give credit where credit is due to Chris Biddle there. So
well, and again, this is a nonpartisan issue, making our elections better, more robust, and more secure. This shouldn't be Liberal or Conservative or Bloc or whoever. Like this should be all MPs working towards this goal.
So
thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for coming today, and thank you for all the work you do. You guys have a tough job. There's no doubt about that. A couple of questions. I want to go back to this so-called longest ballot issue. I think we can all agree that it's outrageous. I mean, if we're being frank with each other, this thing, if it had a purpose, I'm not sure anybody understands what it is anymore. So in my personal opinion, we need to find a way to stop it. This is not a partisan issue. It's an issue that impacts all of the parties in different ways at different times. I mean, it was an issue in Battle River Crowfoot. It was a battle in Mr. Poilievre's previous riding, the one he lost. The name escapes me at the moment.
Sure it does.
But it was also an issue in previous by-elections where Liberals won the race. So it affects us all equally. Look, in Battle River Crowfoot, one of the candidates, I believe, was from my riding. I don't know that she's ever been there. I'm not even sure she could find it on a map, frankly. So we need to stop this. So my question is, what steps can be taken to do it? For example, to register as a candidate, you have to submit your papers. You have to go through some sort of interview process, but you don't have to do it in person. I know of circumstances where the person who was responsible for doing interviews spoke to somebody on Zoom or Teams. The person wasn't in the city. The person wasn't in the province. I'm not even sure they were in the country. They were on a boat. I understand, this helps. It helped particularly during COVID in certain circumstances, but is there any thought being given to requiring in-person attendance for people when they're going through this process to conduct the interview when they submit their papers?
So that's not a terrible idea. I don't think it's going to eliminate it, but if you layer controls upon controls, then it serves to really narrow the possibility of actually doing this.
Right. One control might eliminate 5%. Another one might eliminate 10%. And then another one, another 5%. So when you're layering all these controls together, you're going to hopefully reduce the number of, I'll call them fake applicants, to stop this ballot flooding.
Well, and even if you don't require them to be there in person, like they should have to show up in the riding to do something as a candidate, like something. They should. Now, to get around this, they may be able to find a bunch of people that are in the riding allegedly and want to quote unquote sign up. But there would be probably the vast majority of people in that 200 plus people who signed up from across the country that would not show up to complete their nomination and would be disqualified from the ballot. So I don't find that a terrible idea. The main points that we raised, as you may recall, on our petition is 1, we wanted 100 unique signatures. 2, we wanted a affidavit that they'd have to sign, a declaration of genuine intent that they did intend to run honestly, and they did intend to run with genuine intent to win the seat. And then failing that, in the audit after the actual election, if they demonstrate that they did not do so whatsoever, then you would have to pay $2,000 to $3,000 fine, something like that. That way, it would cost the longest ballot, in that case, $400,000 to actually run. Now, a lot of these people, they're probably not going to be in a position to just hand out $2,000 or $3,000. Because we already know the initial challenge to the upfront payment of $1,000, that was struck down as a charter breach.
But there's nothing against like punitive
at the end.
Yeah.
At the end.
Yeah.
So that's where I like our idea of a punitive piece at the end. But I'm okay with Maloney's suggestion of requiring the candidate to actually interview in person in the riding. Why? Because you're supposed to be campaigning in the riding.
Well, that's it. If you want to be a candidate, you need to be in the riding.
So, Ashley Reeves asking if the petition has been read yet. No, it has not yet.
Not that we know of, yeah.
But from what we know, there's going to be an upcoming study on the longest ballot. So that might be why.
Yeah, they could be holding off.
Right.
Yeah.
So there we go. Anyway, folks, we have Chris Johnson, member for 5 months. Have you guys reached out to Stephen Harper to see if he would come on the show? Your take, if Elections Canada was more organized, that results would be different. The results would have been a little different, but it wouldn't have affected the outcome of the entire election. Like, you wouldn't have the Liberals not in a minority government, in our opinion, based on everything that we've seen. And we have reached out to Stephen Harper's team. I think it's been a
little while, yeah. It's been a few months.
But we can certainly reach out again and see if he's free. He's a very busy guy these days, so we'll see if he is available and willing to come on. And we have Wheezy, welcome to NP supporter. Great to have you aboard. And Gordon Muir, thank you very much for dropping 10 memberships. Very much appreciated. And Robert Sadies for $5. Wait. You want us to show up in person when we commit voter fraud?
Yes, we could arrest you right then and there.
That is going to make it so much harder, right? And so much easier, to throw your ass in jail.
But you'll be out in like 24 hours, so it's okay.
And then you'll have Larry Brock showing up and saying to you,
I guess my appearance at committee's not going very well today.
I guess my appearance in this election is not going very well today. I love that
goodness.
one. And this one just for the hell, because I love the boys.
What the hell is going on?
All right.
I love that one.
Autistic Avenger for $2. Did Gary respond to your email? I imagine not. You imagine correct. You imagine correct.
Thank you for the question. I would be reluctant to require an in-person presence. We have very, very large electoral districts in Canada, probably some of the largest, if not the largest, in the world. Nunavut, to take an example, is almost 2 million square miles and very limited communications across the riding. That creates a range of challenges, of course, for candidates and elected MPs. But in large districts, to require the presence at the office of the returning officers, even where we have satellite offices, may present challenges for some of the candidates.
Okay. So I just saw this in chat, and I want to make sure it's addressed. So Michelle Gauthier, I'm not picking on you. I just noticed that you said it. Said 123,000 mailing ballots have not been counted. So that is technically correct, but the worst kind of correct in this case. So this was a
unmitigated horse pucky
story that was going around, and nobody except us and Blacklock's reporter bothered to actually dig into it. Most of the people that were talking about this just threw that out and said, oh, it's outrageous that they weren't counted. So 123,000 mail-in ballots were requested, and many were not filled out. Like the vast majority, I think like 100,000 plus weren't filled out.
Yeah, so what happens is, well, I should say, number one, we did a video on this. So if you are interested in getting into the nitty gritty of this, check back, probably
catalog.
about 2 months ago, I would say, in our back catalog. But what happens is when Elections Canada sends out mail-in ballots, or special ballots is what they're called, they record how many they're sending out. And then they also record how many are coming back. And then they also record how many come back late. It is the responsibility of the voter to have their special ballot back to the address that it is required to be back at by the cutoff time, which I think was 6 p.m. on election night. So there was a certain number of ballots that did not make it back by that cutoff time. And there was another set of ballots that people requested them and just never sent them back.
And this happens every election?
Yeah, this is not like some big, huge scandal. This happens every single election.
So that's not something that I have considered, just to be clear.
Okay. I understand that geography is a significant hurdle in Canada, but there has to be some way to curtail the abuse from that perspective. I don't know, ask them to name 3 streets in the riding or name 2 restaurants. There's got to be something to prevent this absurd situation, which takes me to my next point about the signatures. There's been some discussion about this today. You're required to get 100 signatures. I'm not sure that preventing somebody from signing two candidates' forms is necessary. That might be a bit too strict, but there has to be a way to curtail it. I don't think the signatures are required to be submitted in original form. It can be done electronically, if I'm not mistaken. If you could confirm that. And the second question is, what processes are used or what steps are taken to validate the signatures? Does anybody ever do any follow-up and go knock on the door and say, "Hi, Mr. Maloney, your name appears on this form. Was it you that signed it, or was it some member of your family," etc.?
First question, Mr. Chair. Signature documents can be scanned and uploaded electronically, submitted through our portal. With respect to the second question, the answer is no. We don't go, for example, door to door. Our returning officers are not experts at comparing signatures, and very often nomination papers are filed at the last hour, if not the last minute. So for the returning officer who's got 40 hours to confirm, and usually likes to inform the candidate if there's a problem with one of the signatures, if there's a missing signature, then they have to move very, very quickly to make sure that these are names of people who are in the electoral districts, and that's the verification process that takes place. Obviously, there may be situations where it's apparent that it's the same signature across the board, and if it's so apparent, that would be flagged. But that is not the same thing as truly having a signature verification process for the nominations.
So when these are uploaded...
Sorry, Mr. Maloney, you did have 2 seconds left, and I've now used them, so...
Yes.
Jackson.
Okay, so pretty reasonable and intelligent line of questioning from the Liberal Mr. Maloney. So again, props.
Yeah, again, this is not a partisan issue. All of our MPs, regardless of party, should be working towards fortifying our elections.
So I appreciate that there's actually a Liberal saying, yeah, this is garbage, and there should be something done about it. It's a pity your actual government doesn't feel the same way. But it's, as I said, we call it like it is. So it's nice to see a Liberal using their committee time wisely and productively in this case. So we have Will Kalchuk for $10. I'm sorry, but I volunteer as much as I can. I can't do much more, but I try my best, and we need to back all of us. Please help any way you can. We can do it. Let's go. And great attitude, Will. 100%.
Yeah, and when we were volunteering with various campaigns during the election period, everybody was telling us the same thing. Let your audience know that if they only have an hour once over this entire 5-week period, come on out. We can use your help. Like, you don't have to be there for 8 hours a day every single day, 5 weeks. If you've got, again, an hour on a Sunday afternoon, maybe you can make some phone calls for them. Maybe you can go door knocking. There's so much stuff that you can do. And
as we've said, and as the party has said, and as I think everyone that's involved in politics has said, the time to prepare for the next election is now. And we expect, there's a lot of people that expect, it's not just us, there's a lot of people that expect an election to happen next year. So with that in mind, if you can volunteer, even if you just reach out and let them know that you're interested, you don't have to have any special talents. Reach out to your EDA if you can and let them know, hey, I'm here. This is how much time I have.
Yeah, and I mean, just reach out to your EDA if you can, because it's a great way to meet new friends, and you know that you have something in common already. Like we're going to be going out with our EDA for a volunteer appreciation night over the weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun.
So, Mega Man Zero for $5. Liberals, we can't have an in-person because people have a hard time moving. Conservative, then reduce the price of diesel and housing so they can move.
100%.
Well played. Well played.
That's good.
Thank you, Chair, and very nice to meet both of you. My pleasure and a privilege to be here as a new member of Parliament under the 45th general election. So thank you for making sure that that went smoothly, and my local returning officer, Joni Swidnicki, is a wonderful person. She did a great job in Brandon Surras. So wasn't originally going to start here, but I am just curious because you mentioned it about the pencil issue. So would it be beneficial, I guess, to just go back to Elections Canada providing pens at voting booths in order to deal with this misinformation issue that was out there? Is that something that you would consider going forward, is going back to pens?
So this is another thing that we did a video on. This is funny. Basically, what we had found in our research is that Elections Canada, generally speaking, provides pencils because they don't dry out. They're cheap, right? Think of how much a pack of pencils costs. It costs like nothing. And they store everything in a box and keep it in the returning office between elections so that when you pull it out 4 years from now, it's not going to be dried up. It's not going to not work. You just have to sharpen it. That was the main reason that they use pencils. Now, many polling stations did have things other than pencils, like the one we went to had markers.
Sharpies, yep.
But this is the reason for the pencils.
And you're allowed to bring your own writing instrument.
You can, yep.
So, but there's a lot of misinformation going around, junk information, as Tanya says, about the fact that people were saying, don't let them use pencils, they can erase your vote, and like all of this business. And unfortunately, wasn't true. But that's what was spreading like wildfire at the time. So that was one of the issues. And remember, we told everybody before the election, you're going to hear a lot of crazy crap during the election, and it's going to try and convince you not to vote, that our elections are fraudulent. And that's the goal of these foreign regimes in these elections. They are present when they are trying to get people to distrust our elections. And they just throw this information out there, and hopefully they hope that someone picks it up and it just spreads like wildfire. And I don't know whether or not this was something that was seeded from one of those foreign states or not, but whatever it was inaccurate, and it spread like wildfire.
But all these little things serve to undermine our democracy, and that's why they're so dangerous.
Right. This brings us to actually a post that we put up prior to the live stream where the Canadian press tried to fact check us.
Now, let me say, I don't mind being corrected. You guys have seen before where we get an email, we get a comment, we get something that is brought to our attention, we see it, and then we go, oh shoot, yeah, we made a mistake, and then we will go from there. But this was not a correction. This was not a fact check. This was, I don't even know. This was like correcting people incorrectly.
It was very bizarre.
It was very bizarre.
I'm gonna just try and pull up our post here, just so
it
people
didn't
can see.
Call us out by name, which I thought was even weirder, but it linked to an archive of our YouTube video where we had said, what did we title it again? It was that Carney creates fake construction site.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Something like that.
So I'm just gonna see about bringing it up here.
Okay, Ryan's just trying to pull it up so you guys can see it on the monitor.
Okay, so we're gonna flip over to this. Give me a sec, folks. Here we go. So the Canadian press, and they get $1.6 million a year in taxpayer funds, just so everybody knows. So they tried to say that we were trying to say that these were all, or we called them fake homes that were being set up. What we were saying is that Carney created this fake construction site to try to convince everybody that it was real homes, and their proof of to try and debunk us was, well, Carney said that that these homes weren't even going to be used for it. Like, for example, he said that one over there is going to Nunavut. Well, that's all he said, because when he says, well, they assembled them on site in like a day, and we stopped them from finishing them so you could see inside. Well, why would they finish a modular home if they're just going to take it back down again? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So you staged the whole thing. You had excavators in, gravel, and half-built walls. All of this doesn't make any sense. So anyway, we looked them up, and we said, hey, how much funding did you actually get? So this is what we found. So here's one. So they got $1.355 million from the Canadian Journalism Collective. They got another $128,000 from the Government of Canada, and this was a contract. And they got another $44,000 from another contract, and they got another $11,000. So, you have all of this money that they're getting, and they're trying to fact check us.
Well, and just for clarity, what we had called it was, we called this video Mark Carney caught creating fake construction site for a housing announcement.
Yep.
I mean, I know the houses weren't fake. Obviously, you could see the lumber.
Right.
It's not like it was a mirage or something. But the point of the video was that they built these houses on this lot and just got rid of them after the photo op was
as a
done.
stage set. So, yes, they were real in terms of they were actually modular homes, but they weren't being built there for somebody to live in. So,
right. Now, again, I don't mind being corrected, but what I do mind is nitpicky garbage like that.
Especially as it relates to the mainstream media. You're getting paid an additional $1.6 million a year. Maybe you should spend that on fact-checking yourselves.
Well, and you can get the Truth at Northern Perspective for free.
Yep. So there you go, because we get zero taxpayer money. Anyway, making sure I'm not forgetting anybody. Yes, I am. So we have Michael Harry for $5. Thank you very, very much. The question that needs to be asked is how many mails requested that were never received? This is what happened to me. And if you haven't, please make sure you raise that with Elections Canada. So that is an interesting question. I don't know if...
I don't actually know the protocol for that. Like, if you request a mail-in ballot but don't actually receive it on your end, so you can't fill it in and send it back, I honestly don't know. Elections Canada would be the best place to call and ask them about that.
Hopefully you were able to actually cast your vote, unless you were an expat, and then that would have been a big problem for you. So,
well, once you request a mail-in ballot, your name's struck off the list. You can't go into a location to vote.
Right, but if you show up and say, "Hey, I never received my mail-in ballot," like we don't know the protocol.
Yeah.
So, Ravis says for $2, are you saying they are not the sharpest pencils? Yes.
Oh my.
And Michael Harry dropping 10 Northern Perspective gift and memberships. Thank you very, very much for that, Michael. And Wesley Snipes. Wesley Snipes. Hold on. Where is it? I should know this by now. Kitchen, yes. Dropping 5 memberships. Thank you very, very much for that. Will Kowalczyk for $2. A good thing about pencils is they smudge.
So they actually, that special paper that they print the ballots on, it's smudge resistant.
It's not smudge proof, but resistant.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure if you like really, really, really try, maybe you could, I don't know.
But that's to prevent it from being erased.
Right. But there's a video that we did, I think it was a short during the election time, where you can actually see somebody from, like, they were demonstrating the paper on Elections Canada, and they were like rubbing the mark that they had made on the ballot, and it wasn't going anywhere.
Alrighty, back to this.
So to be clear, I don't believe we ever did use pens at polling stations. We've all used, as far as I know, always used pencils. The benefit of pencils, beyond the fact that they are economical, is that they don't dry up. and they don't smudge. So if you start using ball pens, for example, and you stored them for 4 years and the leftovers stay on for some pencils have been in our boxes for several cycles. They're always working. If you buy pens, you have to verify that they work. And even if they do work, sometimes they may smudge, and that could cause ballots to be rejected. So our preference is for pencils, but we do not disallow the use of pens.
Thank you for that. Just trying to deal with this misinformation issue. There may be an additional cost, but on the information side and dealing with credibility questions about ballot, perhaps that is worth the cost. But when you talk about smudging, for example, I understand that is an issue on the physical ballot itself. But I would like to try, as parliamentarians, I think we all would, to try and combat some of those issues, again, in a nonpartisan fashion if we can. So if there's anything we can do, please let us know. In terms of the report, it was very comprehensive. I agree with my colleagues' comments on that. It states that more than 60% of voter information cards were either mailed late or not at all. And I understand with labor disruptions and just the general context of mail delivery these days, I'm skeptical that is likely to improve going forward. So in terms of the voter information cards themselves, if 60% can't be delivered on time, have they outlived their usefulness? Or what does Elections Canada recommend? Would you consider other types of delivery providers to ensure that 60% figure not getting delivered on time is very high, in my opinion? Have you considered other options to get those cards on time, or are they past their usefulness?
So thank you. That's a very rich question. I'll try to peel the different parts of the onion. Just to be clear, 60% were mailed late. That's after day 24, which the Act provides, so they should be in the mail at day 24. I believe it's something like 17%. It's a much lower figure that arrived late, and for me, late is after advance polls have begun. So, of course, we want that to happen before advance polls, but it's critical that they be received before polling day. So that's the first point. The second point, Mr. Chair, is that it's not primarily a mail delivery problem. In this election, a challenge that we faced was the inability not of finding but confirming polling locations. In many cases, what we see is that it takes a lot more time to negotiate leases, whether it's school principals, school boards, commercial landlords with lawyers and boards that they report to, having to validate and approve the leases in a way that was not the case before. So it's no longer a handshake or a phone call and a quick signature. It's a long process. And then the returning officer moves to Plan B, and Plan B is the same long process, and Plan C is the same long process. So the main challenge, is securing polling locations in a timely way, and that's why I said that the calendar in a fixed date is not a problem, but outside of a fixed date, that really creates an important pain point.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick question, because I know I'm running out of time in this round, about my constituency. I heard a lot, and again, I'm a new candidate, about a couple of locations, Hobbs Manor in Brandon, which is a seniors' residence, and La Riviere and Cypress River, two communities that have had polling stations in them for time immemorial. Nobody can remember an election where they didn't have a federal polling station. All of those places did not have one this time. So it has the population threshold to have a polling location changed as part of this election? Or why would these long-standing communities that have always had a polling location not have had one? It, particularly in the two rural towns, it severely impacted because there is no public transit available in these communities to get to the next community over for residents to be able to vote, etc. So it was a significant barrier for all of those locations.
And I do appreciate that. We did not raise the threshold in any way for locations for assigning polls. We had more polls in this election than in previous elections. The ability to find one that is suitable in the right location is where the challenge is. So it's not about Elections Canada wanting to reduce the number of polls, quite the contrary. For me, especially for polling day, the last chance to vote, proximity voting has always been top of mind and is critical, and that's one thing that we strive to achieve.
That was a garbage answer, Perot, because this guy's saying these are the suitable locations. Everyone expects them to be at these locations.
I'm wondering if it had something to do with his previous answer, which was that it's not just a handshake and a nod anymore. It's like some big to-do in order to actually get these polling stations secured. So maybe it was just that they weren't able to complete the lease paperwork or something like that.
Well, and here's the other thing. This was a snap election, and Perot did say that it's a lot easier to secure locations when it's in the calendar and that's what you're planning on. So it's much easier to actually get these places kind of nailed down ahead of time when you're expecting the regular anticipated date. But because this is a snap election, all of a sudden, surprise, everyone has to scramble and try and find polling stations across the country within weeks. So that must be kind of a stressful situation for the Elections Canada folks that are having to do that. So, because you're not just doing it in all the ridings in one province, you're having to do it in 343 ridings in the entire country.
Well, and there's typically 200-ish stations per riding, so that's a lot.
Yeah, and that's polling stations, but that may be like 5 physical locations, right? Like, so who knows?
No, but if you've got 200
10.
polling stations, you might have a maximum of, let's say, 5 per. So you're still going to end up with 40 polling locations.
Well, they actually do talk about, in some cases they can get high schools and stuff like that where you can fit like 20, 30, 40, right? So
yeah, well, and that's where our advanced polling, we went into a community gym, and there was like 5 or 6 different polling stations there.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Governor General has entered the studio. So, what do we got? We have Sully Canuck for $20. Thank you very much. Hello from a loyal follower in Andrew Lawton territory. Hello, London, St. Thomas. Welcome to the live stream. Great to have you aboard. And we have a $20 super chat. Thank you very, very much from Michael Harry. The longest ballot committee should have to disclose their ties to the Communist Party when going around looking for signatures. People will be less inclined to play their game if they know they're supporting communism. So the one thing we have to be careful about is there's actually 2 parties. One is called the Communist Party of Canada, which has no ties to the longest ballot, and then there's the Marxist-Leninist Party, which we also say is a communist party, but I guess there's some animosity between the Marxist-Leninists and the Communist Party, and which is ironic. And the Marxist-Leninist Party does not like to be called the Communist Party, and the Communist Party doesn't like the Marxist-Leninist Party to be called the Communist Party. So,
and the Marxist-Leninist Party doesn't like us.
Yeah, and they don't like us. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. So anyway, but yeah, I don't disagree. Everyone should know that they have very, very interesting ties to the Marxist-Leninist Party of Canada.
Well, and the interesting thing is that we had heard, and again, it's not proven, this is just an allegation, but the people for the longest ballot committee were going around saying that they were part of the Libertarian Party in order to get signatures. Yeah,
this was reported by the staff of Michael Harris when he was running in Battle River Crowfoot. So there's allegations that there were people, allegedly from the longest ballot, going around and saying, oh, yeah, I'm from the Libertarian Party. Meanwhile, Michael Harris was already on the ballot, was already affirmed as a candidate, so it would be impossible for anybody else from the Libertarian Party to be acclaimed as a candidate.
Well, because he'd already completed it.
And this is where it was probably one of the only points I agreed with Bonnie Critchley, is where she was saying it actually made it really, really hard for the actual independents to be knocking on doors and campaigning because...
And trying to get signatures, yeah.
Well, but even if you're campaigning, because everyone thought that they were a member of the longest ballot committee. So that made it very difficult for them as well. Travis Becker for $7. Thank you very much. I said a 3-party for elections. A party who couldn't care less who wins to make sure the election isn't rigged. I thought as a good idea. Thank you very much for that. Whitfirst SS for $7. To me, CP going after you guys instead of doing their own checking is an admission you guys did something right. That's what we've gotten a few comments like that. Lazarus for $5. Rural areas that have more conservatives than liberal, and the polling stations were closed. Compromised? No, I don't think they were compromised. I just think it was much more difficult to actually get locations on very short notice. That seems to be what the challenge was. Will Calcheck for $5. Come on, come one, come all. Hit the like. Gifts on the way. 2,000 got you. So we're 339 away with 1,400 concurrent viewers. So we'll see what happens with that. But 2,000 looks like Will's going to drop some memberships. So
Will's always good for it. So make sure you hit that like button.
And Peter Witten for $5. This is a little off topic, but I think I have a man crush on Jason Jake after this week. My girlfriends do not blame me. He seems like good stuff.
Nice.
Let's see. Do I? Yes, I do.
Emotional damage.
And
What the hell are they thinking over there?
there you go. There you go. Back to committee after that.
If I may,
We have 2 hours. Yes, I will.
on your initial question, we are looking at options. So voters can go online at any time and find their polling location. Of course, once it's confirmed, they don't need to wait for their voter information card. We would like to allow electors to download their voter information card in digital format. Now, that would not replace the paper one because for some electors, that's just not an option. But I do believe that over time, the paper voter information card may go away. But that's not for the immediate future. I think we need to have multiple layers as we move forward.
May attempt to meddle in democratic elections and undermine.
I was going to say, if you're going to do that, then and just allow people to print their cards, then you need to make sure that people are providing photo ID.
Right? Must have. No reason not to be presenting photo ID. None. Zero.
Well, the excuse, hey, don't scratch my table. The excuse is that it's hard for some people to get ID and blah, blah, blah. Like, oh, people who don't drive. Well, you get one of those purple cards. I don't know what they're called here in Ontario, but it's like an age of majority card.
Then yeah. Then what you should have to do when you're 18 is you must have to get some sort of government ID,
or a passport, or a health card, or whatever it happens to be. But I don't like that we don't require photo IDs.
Yeah, I think that's a big problem.
Yeah, I think they do require them if you're not pre-registered. But I think if you are pre-registered and you are printing your voter card, that you must provide photo ID. That's just my opinion. But yeah.
Anyway, so this Liberal is actually asking an interesting question pertaining to AI.
And one of the ways that is increasingly happening is through deep fakes or artificial intelligence. And so can you tell us why these threats need to be taken seriously? Should AI content made by or on behalf of political entities be labeled? And how do you think the Elections Act can be used as a tool to fight against malicious uses of artificial intelligence in our elections?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. I have made recommendations on that specific topic before the election in the context of the Hogg Commission. I do believe that there are adjustments that are warranted in the Elections Act. For example, the impersonation rules contemplate a situation where someone presents herself or himself as somebody else, but not where they present somebody else in a different context or saying or doing things that they haven't done. So there are adjustments that are required to deal with that. I do believe labeling of all synthetic content would provide greater transparency as well, and that's also a recommendation that I had. We have not experienced, thankfully, significant amounts of disinformation using AI in this election. My understanding is that it may have been used more to promote content than to manipulate it. But we did see see, for example, a fake Journal de Montréal article saying that for those over 60, Elections Canada's moved polling day on the Tuesday. And that wasn't AI, but it was made to look like, or it may have been, but it was made to, you don't need AI to do that. But thankfully, social media platforms were very, very quick to respond and to pull that content down.
Too much more, but...
So that sounds like something that a foreign actor would do. Because obviously that was done to try to just trick people into voting on the wrong day.
Well, it was done to try to trick people into not voting, right? Because if the election day was Monday and they said, oh no, if you're this age and older, you need to go vote on the Tuesday instead.
Yeah, then by the time they showed up, it's over.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't vote, yeah. And
so is that a foreign actor? I don't know. It could just be some kid thinking they're pulling a prank. Like, who knows?
Yeah, so...
Because that's something you could very easily do with Photoshop, right?
Oh, yeah, 100%. And
I'm not saying you should, okay? Let's clarify. I'm not saying you should.
But you've also seen these fake CBC articles, too,
yes.
Right?
Yeah, where there's an entire website set up to look like it's CBC. Or we get a lot of emails about... I saw there was an ad before your show that was Mark Carney suggesting people invest in Bitcoin or whatever it happened to be.
That's the same thing. Like they'll see Pierre Poilievre, same thing. Like
a lot of scams out there.
If they're having Mark Carney advertise on our show, trying to get people to trust them to invest in Bitcoin, they're advertising on the wrong show. So you know what? Keep advertising on our show because no one's going to fall for that. So.
I hope not.
Anyway, Gokodani with $2 talking about the ID, the Ontario card.
Yes,
100%.
that's it. Thank you.
100%.
We'll turn it over to Mr. Cram for 5 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for joining us today, and especially thank you for your very detailed report on the 45th general election. I think that election night is a very exciting and stressful time for candidates and Canadians alike. I'm sure everyone in this room was on the Elections Canada website on the evening of April 28th, and unfortunately, when we needed it most, elections.ca crashed. According to page 18 of the report, it went down at 7 p.m. on election night, and it was not fully restored until just after 5 a.m. the next morning. And I strongly suspect even the most hardcore political junkies were fast asleep by 5 a.m. and there was probably a very large reduction in volume and traffic at the website by that late hour. So I was wondering if the witnesses could share with the committee what exactly went wrong with the website and what steps are being taken to make sure that doesn't happen again. And I hope that the technical solution is not to just wait until 5 o'clock in the morning when people stop using the website.
This is going to be a very interesting answer for us techies to hear what he has to say about this.
Yeah, so pay attention, Mercedes.
So thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Many elements to that question. To be clear, it's not technically speaking, the website was not the problem. The web service provider that's behind the website, so our systems were functioning, but people could not access them. So there was a failure of a firewall that is set up by a private partner that provides the web services for us during the election, and that firewall could not handle the spike that we saw on election night. We did see throughout the election period, I should say, we saw double the visits on our website, and that was true as well on election night, more than double what we had in the last two elections, which were pretty stable. So that created a firewall to go into what we call protection mode, and to stop the traffic from penetrating or slow it down significantly such that it was very difficult for most Canadians to get access. A couple of things. One is that...
Makes sense?
Does that make sense? Well, it depends on the context.
In the context that I just said it, does that make sense?
So do I accept his explanation? Yes.
Okay.
Does it make sense that that's how they would set it up? Absolutely not.
Well, it's government. Of course they're going to set it up poorly.
If you're surprised, it's like, oh, well, we had double the amount of traffic. Duh. It's election night. Frickin' duh. What do you expect?
And this is why your maps wouldn't work.
Yes, this is why our actual map wouldn't work. And this is why we had to keep going back and forth between CBC and Global and CTV, because in one case, their map was updated, and then in another case, it wasn't. So that's why. And we were actually working on, for a couple months, we were working on our own Northern Perspective map.
Yeah, it looked pretty sweet.
Yeah.
It was Barnaby's brainchild.
I was going to make a joke, but it would be a really bad joke. Unfortunately, we weren't able to use it because of this issue. So Barnaby's going to be like, yes, it wasn't my fault. So, but how do you not, as Elections Canada, how do you not have what's called a load balancer out front?
We got that right after we launched the website because you guys crashed it on the first night.
Yeah. But this isn't new. Like, duh. Especially, this is like, has Elections Canada been paying attention to the political climate? You don't think that everyone and their mother is going to be looking at the Elections Canada website or tuning into one of these other media outlets that is pulling data from that, and those are pulling from it constantly? Frickin' duh, man. Revis Ace for $2. Ooh, I like fishing. Tasty, especially fried. And Derek Macbeth for 60 Mexican pesos. I actually tried to report one of those Carney investment scams to Facebook, but they refused to do anything about it, right?
See, that's not right, because in my opinion, if Facebook is profiting off running those ads, which they are, right? You pay
They're profiting
Facebook
off of criminal activity.
Yeah, exactly. So they should be very concerned about running those sorts
100%.
of ads.
And Revis says for $2, was the firewall provided by GC Strategies? Maybe that's the only contract they have left. I don't know. So,
at that point, we had to identify the source of the problem. We were very quickly informed, working with Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, that it was not a cyber attack. So this was almost instantaneous. We knew that that was not the case. Our service provider, however, was not able to identify in real time the source of the problem. So there's a few lessons learned from that event.
Garbage.
Of course, from the service provider point of view, they have augmented significantly the capacity of their firewalls. They've replaced the firewalls with much greater capacity and doubled them. We've also introduced protocols where we will be monitoring more actively their pre-election tests rather than let the commercial partner do their test. We will want to be more involved in seeing the tests that take place. So they're very committed to that.
it's right there. He said, well, they've doubled them. That means there's a load balancer now. After the election. Great job, guys. Great job.
We did have a fail-safe, a couple of fail-safe solutions. One is that there's a separate channel that provides the results to the media consortium. So the results kept flowing through the media consortium to the media, and that's through a different channel. And that's an important safety that we will, of course, maintain. And we had an alternative replication of our website across the world in thousands of servers, except that replication, two things. One is that it's a static website. We're looking into that. It provides information, but not live information. And we, in hindsight, took too long to switch to that static website. We should have switched sooner. So we're drawing lessons from that event and making sure it does not happen again.
This segues well into my next question about the live results were still being distributed to the media. When I was declared the winner on election night, I did a screen print of the results and posted it to social media and said thank you to all the voters. When I checked the results the next morning, I was down 1,300 votes from the
Wow.
results posted on election night. And there was something that, now, fortunately, my opponent was down by about the same amount, but we saw this in Terrebonne and in other ridings where the results changed from one day to the next. I was wondering if you could explain how it's possible to lose 1,300 votes from election night to the morning of the next day, and why there are these discrepancies in the results being reported to the mainstream media.
I'll have to, Mr. Chair, look into that question more deeply in terms of losing votes, because that is that would be surprising. What is not surprising is that election night results do vary between election night and validation. That's why there's a validation. In fact, if you look at the Elections Act, preliminary results do not exist in the law. That's something that we, of course, provide as a matter of tradition, and Canadians and candidates very much want it. But it has to be clear that on election night, with poll workers calling in results being hand entered into systems, there are late at night fatigue that comes into play and human error. And that's why the validation process is so important. And there's always some variation between election night results and the validation. So,
yeah, but come on here, Stefan. That's different. That's very different.
Yeah.
So what the Conservative MP is saying is both him and like all of the candidates, all of their vote numbers dropped between election night and the next day.
Well,
that shouldn't happen.
The thing is, validation isn't done that quickly either. It's not done from election night to the next morning. It can take up to a week usually. So that was not a validation error, in my opinion. It seems like it was something wrong with the numbers on the website.
Right. But even Perot is saying, well, that shouldn't happen, right?
Yeah, but it did. So you need to make sure it doesn't happen again.
And there needs to be an answer to that question.
Yeah.
Because without knowing how that even happens, you don't know what the impact is. So that's something that Canadians want to know the answer to. So no doubt this is going to be something that he's going to have to submit back to the committee after he actually gets an answer, and we'll see what that answer is. But that's concerning, Perot. And the fact that he's trying to pivot and say, well, validation.
It doesn't sound like it was a validation issue, no.
Yeah, they don't validate
that
the day after. There's like a couple of days that goes by until they start.
Yeah, because they have to get the actual physical boxes.
Right. So
that is not unusual. We also sometimes see important swings in the vote simply because, for example, if a group of advanced poll results come in late at night and they're in a part of the district that tends to favor one candidate, you can see a swing happening, and that sometimes people are concerned about that, but that's not unusual. But we will look into your situation certainly, and we can talk about that.
Fantastic.
Again, swing in additional votes coming in, fine, advance polls.
That makes sense.
But you don't see a swing when votes
go down. Yeah, that seems like a display error or something on the website.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Rose says for $5, I'm just hearing a bunch of excuses for poor planning. I have 2 words for whoever did it. You're fired, right?
And we also have CJR902 with a $5 super chat. Thank you very much. It says, just wondering if you got my email about the Idea Labs proposal. I feel like it's important and would be honored to have you two involved in it. Yes, I did get your email. I am just trying to figure out who is the appropriate person at our EDA to talk to about this, because we're not on the board yet.
We're going to be speaking. Yeah, we haven't had our AGM yet.
So we're not on the board.
We're going to be chatting with our EDA at some point tomorrow. So
hopefully,
hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll have an answer for you.
I didn't want to just email you back and be like, I don't know yet. So I have been working in the background trying to figure out who is the best person to address this and how we can move forward.
Final question is on the recent election we saw, the by-election we saw in Battle River Crowfoot. The ballots were 97 centimeters long, 30.5 centimeters wide. Could you speak to the choice of having voters write in their names, and what kind of impact these had on increasing kind of the resources the Elections Canada had to allocate towards that election?
So in Carleton, where we had the long ballot with 97 candidates, we did have to send in people from headquarters. We believe around 40 staff members were sent in to facilitate the count, and throughout the election period to support the returning officer at nomination, for example. And so there was extensive hand-holding to support the work there. That's not something that we could have done as well at a distance in Battle River Crowfoot. The numbers were immensely superior, not 93, but 214. If I remember correctly, names on the ballot. So we had to shift and take a different approach. So we did have the write-in ballot. We did have staff on site to support the returning officer, especially for the nomination, confirmation of nominations. Overall, in hindsight, I think it worked well. But as I said, it's not something that I would want to do regularly.
Mr. Cooper, my apologies. Then, sorry.
So,
Did they skip Cooper? Is that what just happened?
No.
Oh.
He was going to skip Cooper, but then he remembered Cooper's there. And I don't want to get Coop dogged. So, yeah.
You will be destroyed!
But, yeah, it was an interesting question about the fact that, what was the impact? And the impact was, well, there was a big impact. Big impact. And the fact that they used
40 staff?
Yeah, at the Carleton riding, that's
a lot.
And imagine how much they were paying them by the hour, because that wouldn't have been salary, that would have been hourly. Because that may have even been overtime. Who knows? So, all because these yahoos want to screw around with our electoral process. With potentially criminal behavior. Where's the investigations? And we have Canadian Breeze for $5. A new election rule. Be a citizen for 10 years. Be 18 years of age in order to have more informed voting. You know what? That's an interesting thought about minimum amount of years to be citizen. Because
Well, typically you take I want to say 3 to 5 years as a PR, and you cannot vote as a PR. So you're here for 3 to 5 years, and that's supposed to be how you're learning what the process is, like how our democracy works, et cetera, and then by the time you actually get your citizenship, then you're ready to vote.
Supposed to be, but this is where one of the concerns about this Lost Canadian bill comes in, because if this goes through and then all these people get grandfathered citizenship, they can all request special ballots, never stepping foot in Canada.
Right, and that, if I'm not mistaken, the Liberals had altered how the special ballots were done several years ago too, where you don't have to have like a meaningful connection to a riding in order to vote.
So maybe this is something that needs to be looked at. That's not a bad suggestion, Canadian Breeze.
It kind of creates issues though, in the sense that you have two different classes of citizens, and this is where that Lost Canadians bill comes in, is because there were two different classes of citizens, where you have one class of citizen who, because they were born here, they can vote, and another class of citizen who, because they weren't born here, they have to wait 10 years until they can vote.
Well,
so I think that's where the Supreme Court would have an issue with that.
I'm completely fine with it, because it's BS that somebody who has literally never stepped foot in the country can vote.
Well,
that's BS.
And that's why we have to push back against Bill C-3, and the Conservatives have been, because you should have to have a meaningful tie to Canada in order to be a Canadian
100%.
citizen.
Because if you're a citizen of this country, which should be a privilege, then you get all the rights that go with it. If the rights mean nothing, then the citizenship means nothing. So, yeah. Anyway, Schwankster for $7. Perot has the Carney smirk down pat. I think Perot is trying his best, because again, he's been asking for electoral reform, and you've heard him tonight talk about multiple things, longest ballot and other issues that he's brought to the attention. He's asked them, and the Liberal government has just been like,
Okay, the Liberal MPs did provide some good questions, though.
The Liberal MPs did, but the
government overall, yeah.
I don't know. Like, I don't even know which one to use. Maybe this one.
WTF.
Autistic Avenger for $2. Thank you very much. Can Libs get toppled within weeks after NDP race? Yes.
Technically, yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
I don't know how fast they're going to do it, but they're not going to do it without a leader. So, I mean, I think March 28th is when they get their leader. They could do it the day after if they really wanted.
Well, again, this is where I find the whole thing interesting, because that's going to be right around a supply vote.
Well, and it is because the budget is supposed to be due in May. Like they start tabling it in May, and then they vote on it usually in June.
Right, but there's always a supply vote at the end of March. So that's interesting.
I think
to
it's
me.
March 26th, though, so it's a few
Maybe.
days early.
Well, in any case, there's going to be, to your point, a budget vote after that. So it gives the NDP a couple months to actually have a solid leader, or not a solid leader, a new leader. For their sake, they better hope it's a solid leader.
You know what, for Conservatives' sake too, though, because we need a strong NDP in order to take seats away from the Liberals.
Well, and if they do actually choose Heather McPherson, which she's the front runner, she may not speak French very well, but she's the front runner, and she's at least saying, I want to bring in more people to the party. Okay, well, you better start changing these stupid rules that you guys have.
Right,
for
you guys
convention.
have to stop with the identity politics.
Yeah.
That's over and done. That's like 2015.
Garbage.
End it now.
So, otherwise, just fold up the tent. So, and Mercedes for $5. Another problem is that many communities become sectioned off to such an extent that they cannot actively learn how it works because language. Indeed. Mr. Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to follow up on Mr. Maloney's questions with respect to verifying the validity of signatures for nomination papers of candidates. Just so that I'm clear, is it the case that at present there is no verification done by Elections Canada, that when signatures are presented on the forms, that they're taken at face value?
Just to be clear, there is no counter information. We don't have on record the signatures of all Canadians to make that comparison, nor would the returning officers have the expertise. Signatures can change. So the very concept of verifying each and every signature to make sure that they're authentic is one that is incompatible with the nature of the process.
Well, so they're taken at face value.
There's a verification that these electors reside in the electoral district,
Right.
and that the numbers are correct. If
That's what I was going to say. So, and I think that's what Cooper's asking as well. So because when you sign, because we've done this, when you sign a nomination paper for a candidate, we've signed this for our previous MP, you put in your name and your phone number and your address and all of that. So what Perot is saying is there's no way to verify that the signature belongs to the person that is who they say they are, but what they do verify is the address of that named individual to ensure that they are actually supposed to be at that address in the writing. So that's what they do verify.
And that the writing is, or that the address is in the writing.
Correct.
Especially after they change it.
Right, because you must be a resident of the riding to sign a nomination paper. Michael Harry again, thank you very much for $2. The Liberal Party has to get past the November 4 budget, and they will. And looks like I skipped Peter Whitten for $10. The best is the worst. The best is the worst enemy of the good, because it disconcerts us from enjoying the good, which could become the best at any moment in time. We are precipice of awesomeness unfolding. We got this. Thank you very, very much, Peter. Mr.
Comparison is the thief of joy, is what
go.
I say.
there are allegations of fraudulent behavior, then that can be addressed in the context of an investigation. That takes a lot more time.
So why not verify or audit signatures? I mean, there was evidence, for example, in the case of the longest ballot committee, that there were organizers going around with nomination forms, and at the top where it said name of candidate, it was blank.
No way! We broke that.
Hey!
That's wild.
Guess where that evidence came from, folks?
Holy smokes. Sorry, I'm trying not to curse on camera.
Wow.
That's really cool.
Wow. That's
That's wild. I got goosebumps. Like,
That's crazy. That sounds like our evidence made it into committee.
because we got those photos from the whistleblower.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. NP Nation's all over this too. Wow.
This is
Up high, Mrs. Brannigan.
This is wild to me because this is what I mean when I say you can make a difference. Like, we're just two dummies sitting here with a YouTube channel.
I'm not dummy.
Okay. Me and Pixel then. But like, you know, we're not trained reporters. We're not journalists. We're not anything. We're just two Canadians who care about this country. And it was making us upset to see what was happening to our democracy, and so we got involved and we started digging.
And this is
the difference you can have as a Canadian citizen.
And you know, this could be a result of why we're so careful with what we put out there, right? We don't put out unverified stuff. We don't put out claims that aren't backed up. So this is crazy.
Wild.
This is crazy. Man. Crazy. All right, I want to listen more. Okay. Well, Kalchuk for $2. How many committees is Cooper on? Because he rocks. As many as he wants to be.
Well, he's the vice chair of PROC, which is where they are right now. But they can like rotate in and out on any other committee.
And you know what? Props to NP Nation out there as well, because without you folks watching, these videos do not get distribution at all. So this is our win.
This is a win for all Canadians because, again, like it just goes to show that you might think you're small, but you can have a huge impact on something as important as our democracy.
Even if you start a silly little program with 2 cartoon puppets that are the worst thing since Chucky. So, Hartsinger for $5. Congrats on the recognition committee. Love you and so proud of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jay Peterson for $10. Great job, both of you. Thank you. And Autistic Avenger for $5. NDP could still vote down the March supply bill if their race ends days later, or there's an opposition motion within weeks of a non-confidence vote. Yeah,
that's
it's possible.
true. That's true. I hadn't considered that.
Or it's possible everybody else drops out and there's only one left. So
there's possible. Your race. Yeah.
Anyway, great job,
Very
folks.
Cool.
Great job.
Thank you to MP Cooper for bringing that up.
Now, not anyone can go out and collect signatures. You actually have to be authorized by someone running to do that.
No, oh, sorry, I almost cursed.
That was one of our other key points. Yeah, man. Okay, I'm not gonna just fanboy
just
over this.
Let it go.
So, what would be difficult, or for Elections Canada, to simply undertake some kind of audit, not necessarily going through each and every person who signed, but picking up the phone or knocking on the door or communicating in some way to verify that, in fact, the individual who appears to have signed the paper did sign the paper, and that they did sign it understanding that they were endorsing a specific individual whose name they wished would appear on the ballot.
That's the last point, because that was the point we made, that's what makes this forgery. Because if they're signing a nomination paper without a candidate name present, and then that's filled in after the fact and then given to Elections Canada, that's a violation of the Act.
Well, and it's a violation of the law too, one would assume.
There are just a couple of points to answer, hopefully, your question. On the issue of blank names at the top, the name of the candidate has to be ascertained, or the potential prospective candidate. There cannot be a blank check. And we have refused in past election. The initial iterations of that initiative involved having a blank check. Basically, people...
That's huge.
That is huge.
Did you hear what he said?
Yeah. That they've rejected it.
They said, yeah, they said when the longest ballot ran in previous elections, they would submit them as blank. Wow. That is huge. How far are we into this? I need to remember this timestamp for later. 2 hours in. That is huge, folks, because that is proof that these guys have done it this way before. And my guess is that they either did it in error or I don't know what. But the fact that he knows and Elections Canada knows that they've submitted these with blank names at the top.
So are they doing it again and just filling in the name before submission? That's the question. And that's the question we asked.
Let's go. Let's go.
Signing on without an identified candidate. That is not acceptable. Okay, so there, it has to be a known candidate identified to the person who signs to support the nomination of that candidate. The issue of verification, as I said, we do not have on record signatures of Canadians, so there's nothing to compare to. It would really require an investigation to find out if these are false signatures. That is not something that we would do lightly. I don't think there's any suspicion that there was fraudulent conduct in those long ballot initiatives. We have no information that people forged signatures. If there was such information that was basically credible information or suspicion, we would refer that to the commissioner.
It's not necessarily forged signatures, but if you present someone 10 different papers and ask them to sign 10 different times, and then after the fact, the name of a candidate appears at the top of that form, and the form is altered after the signatures have been collected, then that raises questions, is it not, about the validity of that candidate and whether there was compliance with the Canada Elections Act?
It certainly does, but I'm not aware of any evidence to that effect.
We sent you evidence! We sent you our evidence! Now I'm mad. What?
I'm just going to my sent items, folks.
Okay, you're going to see what day we sent the evidence.
And sorry for the smash on the table.
Sorry,
you can blame
that's
her.
my fault. I hope you're all not deaf now. Just filter or search?
Was it media?
Was it from your personal one?
It was like it was around July.
Yeah, because that's when we started doing all the videos.
Where's info?
It would have been like end of July, beginning of August.
I think it was this one. Yes.
What day?
July 25th.
July 25th.
At 12:12 p.m.
in the afternoon.
Elections Canada, if you're listening, you were sent a whole bunch of emails.
In his defense, perhaps it didn't make it up for him, to him. Perhaps whoever was receiving the email was just like, oh, this looks like garbage.
Potentially fraudulent nominations, coordinated efforts to manipulate ballots, possible misrepresentation to Elections Canada. So
we did send all of our evidence to Elections Canada.
Oh, you guys are freaking awesome. Stop.
But you know what? It's in committee now. It's in committee now, and we have our petition now. It's still to be read.
-1-2 for $2. Never seen you so passionate. Love it. LOL. Heartsinger for $2 for Tanya not throwing her glasses. Yeah, normally I'm the problem.
I was gonna say I can't afford to break them. They're my only ones.
Church Pro for $2.79 is average person signing papers going to know? Well, they will, because you can look. you can look to see what the candidate name is at the top, and if it's blank, and also if the delegate is blank, like the authorized delegate, if that's blank, then that's a problem as well. Leap Busby for $7. Off-topic question: has MP seen the new CBC in town lately by Travis on YouTube? Can't be censored. Yep. They're doing an amazing job. And wish Travis all the best in his post-CBC career. Michael Harry for $2. Just more evidence that Liberals lie in committee. Well, I don't know if
again,
Stefan's lying.
It's possible it was not pushed up to him.
Yeah.
Like entirely possible.
Possible they looked at this, this is just some crackpot.
Yeah.
Which is
possible.
Going to be interesting. And Mega Man Zero for $2. What a revealing night. Yes.
Right? This is like wild.
Look at the look on Cooper's face. Like, oh really? Oh really?
Well, perhaps you should be, and perhaps that evidence will be presented if you haven't seen it. But
no,
I guess
no.
Nice. I need to back this up. Sorry, folks. Need to back this up.
You're gloating now.
No, I want to make sure I'm hearing this properly.
It would really require an investigation to find out if these are false signatures. That is not something that we would do lightly. I don't think there's any suspicion that there was fraudulent conduct in those long ballot initiatives. We have no information that people forged signatures. If there was such information that was basically credible information or suspicion, we would refer that to the commissioner.
It's
not credible?
Necessarily forged signatures, but if you present someone 10 different papers and ask them to sign 10 different times, and then after the fact, the name of a candidate appears at the top of that form, and the form is altered after the signatures have been collected, then that raises questions, is it not, about the validity of that candidate and whether there was compliance with the Canada Elections Act.
It certainly does, but I'm not aware of any evidence to that effect.
Well, perhaps you should be, and perhaps that evidence will be presented if you haven't seen it. But I guess it just underscores the fact that I guess it speaks to the fact that what is so difficult about Elections Canada calling or taking some sort of mechanism, some sort of process to verify when you have these types of situations, whether they existed in the longest ballot committee or in other circumstances, that could quite easily be detected. It wouldn't take very long to realize that this had been going on. And wouldn't it also serve as a deterrent if there was some knowledge or awareness that Elections Canada was actually verifying that the act was being complied with?
One would
So
think.
again, I have no information that would suggest there was unlawful conduct taking place, either by the leaders or organizers of the longest ballot campaign or by the voters who signed.
That's immaterial. I asked.
If I may,
I asked about.
Mr. Cooper, your overtime. If we can, again, given the amount of time we have, Mr. Perot, finish answering your question, and then we'll move on.
Left alone. Until we have reasons to suspect their behavior, we shouldn't bother them with questions that put into question the authenticity of their behavior. There needs to be something to start with.
There is something.
Yeah, there is something. And they've already seen this in the past. They've said that. And, well, we didn't accept them. Well, Here's the problem.
Well, we told them, do it properly, and we just trust that things happen properly from there on out.
Well, and again, here's the issue. So the longest ballot guys, if they wanted to, they could get all these blank things filled out, assuming that's what they were doing, and then they could write in all the candidates. They said that they accept them via electronic, so they could just literally scan them in afterwards and then send them in. And then Elections Canada is going to be like, how would Elections Canada even know that there's a problem? That's the issue.
Well, and that's just it.
That's the issue.
And that's been our point throughout our video series.
So, anyway.
Thank you so much. Ms. Idlow, please. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the committee for including me in this important study.
So this is important. So Lori Idlow, NDP, right?
Yeah. So what? Either they have to give unanimous consent, or some of the members have to give up their time.
Both. Both. So obviously they threw the NDP a bone here and allowed them to actually come in and talk about this. So this is where we said that the NDP was going to get thrown a few bones here by someone, either the Bloc or the Conservatives, because they need some relevance to steal some votes back from the Liberals.
Well, and you know what? I honestly don't mind in this case, because again, this affects all of us.
Yep.
Doesn't matter what party you are.
And there were some big problems that actually happened up in Nunavut where polling stations didn't open. So
yes, that's right, because there was a snowstorm, I think.
So
Mr. Perot, I've appreciated all your responses and all the work that you've done to make sure that my constituents have an opportunity to vote, such an important right. I'm going to be asking you about 4 or 5 questions related to different phases of the election. So I'll be kind of ping-ponging, just so you know. My first question to you is regarding the voter information cards. In your report, you stated that you had to use Section 17(1) of the Elections Act to allow recognition of individuals who wanted to vote. I'm wondering if you foresee the need to change that section given this Liberal government's position on Canada Post and the labor dispute, how that might impact voter information cards from being mailed in a timely manner?
that's a good question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Madam Idlow, for the question. As I said earlier, we are exploring various delivery channels for voter information cards. The issue of connectivity in Nunavut can be a challenge, I'm aware, in some places, and whether downloading a card is something that would be available to some of your electors is a question that we certainly have to look into. But it is a challenge, and in this case, again, in the case of Nunavut, there were challenges with confirming locations, which delayed the sending of the VIC. That has nothing to do with Canada Post, and are challenges that are, I would say, inherent to the delivery of postal postal parcels or mail in such a large region where, of course, weather incidents can happen and delay the vote. So I think there's a mix of factors, and we can expect those factors to happen again in future elections. And that's why there has to be a range of mechanisms to inform electors of the voting locations and the times to vote, not just rely exclusively on the voter information card.
Thank you so much. I know that you, more than most, will understand the challenges that I experience as the MP for Nunavut, with Nunavut being such a huge territory, with all 25 communities being fly-in communities. Specifically, I do want to ask about the northernmost community, Grease Fjord. As you'll recall, did not get to open their polls until about 2 o'clock. I wonder if you could describe very quickly the circumstances that led to the challenges of voters in Grise Fiord being able to vote on that day.
Very quickly, I think very few Canadians appreciate the challenges that you face and that our returning officer faces in Nunavut, the immensity of the territory. I believe that in Grise Fiord, the issue was with the late delivery, due to weather situation, late delivery of the material. That must include the list of electors with the struck name. So that is something that cannot be delivered many days ahead of polling day. That's something that comes in fairly late in the days leading to polling day. And if there's an important delay, then it can reduce the number of hours at the vote. And I believe that's what happened in Grise Fiord. Mr. Hussein?
It is indeed.
Okay, thank you so much. I wonder what the legislative restraints are from ensuring that those kinds of physical restrictions are avoided, so that there are creative ways of ensuring that, for example, we'll have known by election day who the candidates would be and how they ensure that they can practice their right to vote with possibly knowing that weather delays or mechanical delays will always happen no matter what time of year elections are happening.
I wish I had a good answer for you. I don't have a perfect answer. As I said earlier, I think the delivery of materials, generally speaking, is something that can and must be arranged ahead of time. It requires people on the ground working from the communities, and that is sometimes a challenge. I'll be honest. Recruitment in some parts of Canada, including Nunavut, can be difficult. But having people on the ground and being able to send the material ahead of time is critical. As I said, the one item that cannot be sent so much in advance is the final list of electors where the names from the advance polls is struck. So until we have live lists, and there are limitations to that probably in Nunavut, until we have live electronic lists, I'm not sure what the answer to that is, but it certainly is something that I will be considering.
So I do kind of, like I say, feel for Elections Canada in this case, but it's the logistical challenges of hitting these remote communities in Nunavut and also the Northwest Territories must be and Yukon, yeah, and must be just very challenging, very, very challenging, and the fact that Canada Post is they can't rely on Canada Post anymore because the Liberal government's going to gut it, which is fine, but it's just a reality that they're going to have to deal with. So they're going to need alternate vendors to deliver to these communities.
And a lot of places won't. A lot of places it's in and out by prop plane only.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, or container ship.
Yeah. So. And not in the winter. And
you're not going to be able to ship mail by container ship for Elections Canada when a SAP election drops, right? So so that's going to be very, very challenging. So I appreciate the challenges that Elections Canada is going to have there. And we're probably one of the most unique countries in the world that has to deal with that type of thing.
For sure.
Right? So Rivasays for $5. Sounds like Elections Canada is going to have to figure out stuff for Canada Post
Canada,
yeah,
Post World, 100%.
Yeah. And we have Susan Popkiss joining Northern Perspective. Thank you very much. And Will Cowatruck dropping 20 Northern Perspective memberships. Thank you very much for that, Will.
And we also have the parliamentary page boy joining us, making a silly face.
Apparently he's going to be reviewing committee from now on.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. Just canvassing with the committee. It's 12:32. I propose, and happy to hear thoughts. We've gone through 3 full rounds. That we go through a 4th and call it a meeting. That's fine. Excellent. Okay.
If I may, I do have some more questions if the committee doesn't mind.
We will sort through that. I will canvass with the committee members while we continue along with the questions. I believe it's Mr. Jackson. Well, it's up to you, Mr. I have Mr. Jackson and then Mr. Van Popta as the second conservative in the round. If you'd like to flip that, that's entirely up to you.
Go back to Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try to keep these very brief. There were 57,440 ballots cast by electors living outside of Canada voting by mail, according to your report. That is a significant increase from the 27,035 cast in the 44th general election. Just wondering if you would be willing to submit to the committee a breakdown of which electoral districts these ballots were counted in.
Certainly, that's something that I can commit to providing after, of course, this session. Yes.
Wonderful. All three measures of accuracy for the list of electors, coverage, currency, and accuracy, were lower for this election than the previous general election, and in fact, I think they were lower than the election before that as well. So accuracy is trending down in these three categories since 2019. What are the causes of that, and do you think that's acceptable to deliver a secure and fair election, or what are you doing to address those indicators trending downward?
So I certainly agree that the quality of a list is critical to the quality of the election, both in terms of making it accessible and the integrity of the process. So that's something that's important. Right now we have a coverage, or at the election we had the coverage of 95.2%. That is very slightly lower than in the past elections, very comparable, and an accuracy of 92.2, again slightly lower. If you compare that to 2019, which is a fixed date election, it was slightly higher, just over 96 coverage, because of the fact that we have the ability in a fixed date to do information campaigns ahead of the election and to promote people going on to the register ahead of time and either adding themselves or moving themselves if they have moved. So it is not at all surprising that you would see a difference between fixed date elections and non-fixed date elections. The numbers that we have here are comparable and historically on the high end of accuracy and coverage for the National Register of Electors.
Thank you. And just to follow up on that, so comparing the numbers from 2021 to this election, to non-fixed date elections, but still less this time around than in 2021?
Yes, in 2021 we may have carried over a bit of the benefits. The difference between 21 and 25 are marginal. They're more significant between fixed date 19 and 25. So it's likely, I would speculate, that we carried over some of the benefits of the 2019 election into 2021. Whereas we have a longer time period here between the two elections, between 21 and 25, and so there's a bit of a degradation, a slight degradation of the coverage and accuracy.
And if I may, the safety net during the election is the revision. Any elector can go on our website, call the office of the returning officers, and get the record updated if needs be. So.
Okay, so I think I understand what they're saying.
Well, there's not enough room on this table for two cats.
They're saying that the benefit, the carryover, was that most elector information was still updated because the election was only 2 years after, versus the 2021 election to the 2025 election, it was almost 4 years. So there would have been a lot more time for things to become outdated. So that's most likely what they're saying here.
We had 1.3 million electors at the last election who did so, and which is in line a little more than we had in the 44th GE, to your point. but is way less than the 2.8 millions that we saw at the inception of the National Register of Electors 20 years ago. So the long arc of history, if I may say, goes in the right direction with respect to the coverage, currency, and accuracy of the National Register of Electors.
Thank you. And just my final question, your report talks about disinformation, as you mentioned, particularly on social media elsewhere, and the setup of a web page in many different languages that talks about what interference in elections, what pressure would look like, that type of thing. I'm just wondering how much activity did that section of your website get during this election, of voters coming forward and saying, I think I might have been influenced, I feel, this type of thing? And what does the process look like when you, as Elections Canada, get reports where people are concerned about activity, that pressuring, that's taking place, pressuring people in elections, and where do you take that information? What does the process look like to ensure that those potential threats to a voter or voters are taken seriously and addressed?
So thank you. Just to be clear, the multimedia campaign in 50 languages is not really about it is about information. It's about the basic information about the electoral process. It's not. It helps to fight disinformation, but it's different than the information on our website. We have, for example, electoral facts, which I mentioned earlier, which is specifically to correct mis or disinformation. So there are different tools that we have in place to promote correct information. As I said, we have a social media monitoring team, and when we see incorrect information, we have pre-approved responses that are prepared, that are ready to go, and that we can use our social media platforms to communicate directly to those voters on those platforms. When something new arises that is not captured by our pre-existing message, then there's an escalation process and a decision is made. In some cases, you have to decide whether an intervention would provide greater attention to someone who's posting than not, and measure the quality or the risk to the process that the misinformation carries. So there's a judgment as to when we intervene and with what kind of information. We always want to be factual, never provide opinion. We never say, for example, this is why you can trust election. We say, here are the safeguards. And so we let people make up their minds. So there's judgment as to what kind of language we use. But there's a process in place with a team to escalate if it's new, not pre-approved messages.
Thank you so much. Mr. Maloney, for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. And you owe me 2 seconds from the last round. So I'm going to question about local returning officers. My understanding is that the Canada Elections Act requires that the names and addresses of the returning officers are required to be published in the Gazette, which I think creates a privacy concern, a safety concern. And connected to that, going back to the longest ballot issue, recognizing that most of these people who put their name on the ballot are there to create mischief, that gives them access to the voters list. What protections or safeguards are in place to make sure that those people are not using the voters list, for example, to finding my address in my home, so that they can, put a protest group together and come and disturb my neighbors or any other thing that they may be up to? Because I think once you recognize they're not there for legitimate purposes, I think you then have to build in extra safeguards to protect against it.
That's a really good point. I don't think we've previously considered.
No, that's a really, really good point. And if it's the case that the longest ballot committee is acting by proxy as part of the Marxist-Leninist Party.
Yeah, but they could just run a Marxist-Leninist candidate and get the same information.
Right. But
that's a good point. You could have some Yahoo in Ontario getting all the addresses and contact information for voters in Battle River Crowfoot.
And you get people's names, you get their addresses, and
if you're not there for that specific purpose of running as a candidate, like a true and honest candidate, I mean, what's to stop you from doing something with that information?
What's to stop a foreign state from just co-opting one of these people and getting all that information?
Yeah.
Now they have the names and addresses of potentially 100,000 people, 100,000 electors in a particular riding. That's an excellent question.
Yep.
Before we go on, I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Yep, there's a couple. Okay. -1-2 for $5. Thank you very, very much. Easy. Just make one huge community mailbox in Whitehorse and another one in Yellowknife. Duh.
It's the obvious solution. How could we have missed it?
You will respect my authority.
That's good. Thank you.
There you go. -1-2 is now the official NP mailman. Angel Liscombe, welcome to NP supporter. Great to have you aboard. Thank you very, very much. Leah, member for 2 months. I guess you need to make sure Cooper gets all your proof to pass along. I guess so. And Laura Baker for $7. I support the tremendous hard work you both put into your journalism and show. Thank you
very much, Laura.
And Revis A's for $2. So in Canada, the T800 just had to run for office. Right. How do I find Sarah Connor? Run
Just
for
run
the
for
longest
office.
ballot. Jeez.
So, Mr. Chair, 2 points. First, on the safety point, I agree with that. That is something that I have recommended, that the address of returning officers not be published. That I don't believe serves a compelling purpose, and there are concerns that have been expressed by returning officers about their safety. We've seen that in other jurisdictions in the U.S., for example, and that was something that I believe was included in Bill C-65 in the last Parliament, and hopefully it could be revived.
I'm sorry, I just thought about something like,
how do I find Sarah Connor? I want to be a liberal. Don't I display liberal tendencies?
Nobody wants to be a liberal.
Who's going to vote for me? How?
Okay, I'm done.
Enough silliness.
Access to the preliminary list is not open to unconfirmed candidates. It is open to the parties who ran candidates in the last election. I did make recommendation that it be restricted to the ridings where the party ran a candidate, or once they have a candidate in this election, of course, that they have access to that. But independent candidates, as we have in the longest ballot committee, do not receive the list of electors.
Oh, that's good.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. Okay, so I want to follow up on the point Mr. Cooper and I were both making earlier about the signature issue. Do you speak to your counterparts provincially? And in my case, I'm interested to know whether you've spoken to the chief returning officer in the province of Ontario to determine whether they have done any audits or they have any mechanism or process in place to verify or validate signatures.
So I have had that discussion with Mr. Asensa, the Chief Electoral Officer for Ontario. I know he's faced a situation which, and I don't have all the facts, I want to be prudent here, with potentially fraudulent signatures. He has investigative powers, which I do not have, and I believe some action have been taken, but I don't want to speak beyond that.
Okay, so I would be curious to know if you could speak to him and get back to us on that point, because I feel strongly that there needs to be some verification process on the signatures. Because Mr. Cooper's question about not having the name on the top of the form, I think you'll find a lot of these candidates in these longest ballot scenarios have this exact same list of signatures. There's probably a situation where they're given 10 or 20 pieces of paper without the names of candidates on the top of the paper. They just sign them all blankly. By the time they get into the hands of the returning officer, they have names on them. So from your perspective, they're legitimate. But I would suggest that having identical signatures across the board raises enough red flags for you to investigate, because we're not, we wouldn't be having this discussion if it wasn't for the longest ballot situation, when you're just having a normal situation where people are signing candidates' forms. That happens all the time. So I'm asking that you consider that, take some steps that are proactive on that. My next question, however, is...
Yep.
Yeah, so before we get to that, that's the hypothetical scenario that we've seen play out based on the evidence that we've seen.
Based on the eyewitness testimony.
Is that they're going out, they're collecting signatures, blank forms, and then they're filling in the names afterwards because you have Thomas Shakevich sending in a video bill saying, "Hey everybody, we already have your signatures ready. Please sign up." How do you have my signatures already if I haven't signed up? Please explain that to me. Please explain that. And then why did you take that video down? Things that make you go, right? Anyway.
Relating to poll clerks and the district returning officer, because in my years of experience, when you go to vote, you check in with one person, they cross your name off a list, and the person beside them then hands you your ballot. In this most recent election, you reduced those two jobs into one, which, with the massive increase in interest in early voting, created long lineups. Are you considering going back to the two-person system?
So we do offer the flexibility to returning officers based on the situation that they face. In some cases, I would suggest that the lineups would have been longer had we had the two poll workers, because we would have had half of the tables being served. So it is a bit more stress on the poll workers to do all the tasks alone, but it did allow us to open up more desks, more tables to serve more electors during the advance poll. So there's a balance there to be had depending on the circumstances.
So it's the same number of people, just a different number of tables. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. And my view is that you can serve more electors in this way.
I would think the lineups might lead to the opposite conclusion. Okay, my last point, quick, because I know I'm running out of time. Redistribution caused a bit of an anomaly too, because with the increased interest in early voting, people can go and write in the name of a candidate before the final list is provided. So I had a situation, and many people did, where you go in, you'll knock on a door, and they'll say, "Oh, I voted, but I voted for the guy that used to be the MP here. I didn't know you were the new candidate." And there's no remedy for that. So in a world where people are winning elections by 1 vote or 10 votes or 16 votes, these things matter, because people had an intention of voting for one candidate, but they got the name wrong because of redistribution and they weren't aware of it. Is this something that can be remedied? You've got 10 years to do it, but is this something that you can look into and try to fix?
So I suppose the only remedy to that would be to allow voters to cast their vote by identifying the party name as opposed to the candidate. It's something that I considered in a previous recommendations report. I understand that it is far from unanimous, and I can understand why. There's no clear good or bad answer in that regard, but some jurisdictions like British Columbia do allow that, and it does allow people to cast their special ballot sooner, and it does, in that matter, reduce the number of late ballots, and that's the spirit under which I made that recommendation. Of course, it also reduces the number of spoiled ballot, as in your example.
Thank you.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and it definitely is an issue.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's because what is it? Usually in week 3 of a 5-week electoral period, that's when you cannot change the candidates anymore. So you will get your opponents putting out like dirt on your candidates so that it's so bad you have to drop them and you can't replace them.
Or that if you replace them with somebody new and nobody knows them and all this stuff.
So it's kind of a tactic almost that the political parties use against each other, that maybe that's why they don't want to allow people to write in just the party name.
Well, but it begs the question, why don't, and maybe there's a good reason for this that Election Canada has, and we don't know, why is the cutoff time for these candidates like not the beginning of the writ? Like, why are they allowed to change them later? It would give Elections Canada time before the advanced polling to actually print the ballots and have...
so that's what that 3-week cutoff is, though.
Yeah, but I'm saying give them more time, right? Give them more time.
In a 7-week electoral period, there would be more time.
Then you have a minimum time that they need.
It's like 3 weeks before the election itself is when they have to have the ballots printed, so that's when the names become permanent.
But they can change them after that. Like you can swap out candidates even like a little bit into the election.
No, after the writ is dropped in a 5-week election cycle, you've got 2 weeks where you can swap out.
Right.
Right.
So I'm saying you don't have that 2 weeks.
I think it's for parties that maybe they're having trouble getting candidates in their riding.
Maybe.
Right?
Anyway, it's again, there may be a good reason for it, but
Well, because look at Ken Hewitt in Hamilton Mountain. He wasn't able to, like, he was appointed, so he couldn't sign up right when the writ dropped. He had to wait like however long to get his paperwork together and go.
But I guess my point is if they move that deadline back, then the parties will plan accordingly, right?
Maybe,
So,
maybe not.
Anyway, interesting.
Do I have time left, Mr. Chair?
No, thank you. You're well over. But thank you. They were very good questions, as they all have been. Madame Normandin, s'il vous plaît.
Merci beaucoup. Je comprends qu'il y a un
Thank
des
you very much. I understand that one of the issues that prevent the sending of the voter information card is identified a few factors. But without replacing these cards, could something be sent very early in the election? We already have the voters list, and you even have in some cases, the identity of the returning officer with relevant information saying if you haven't received your voter identification card by a certain date, please call your an office to get information on where it is. Maybe a QR code that could say bring you to the site of the chief electoral officer. Can you have a digital message, but as well a card that gets sent very early to the elector, the voter? That's not just considered, it exists. We send to each household a document saying, if you live here and you're a voter and you have not received your voter information card, as you suggested, please call or go online, because all of the information is available online. The voter information card had some additional advantages. It's a reminder that people often post on their fridge door, and it's also an element that can be a proof of address with another identity card for voters who don't have a driver's license or bills in their name. But all of that information is available, and we do campaigns, and we mail different households so people can check. And that's how some people, it's not because they're delayed, but they're not registered at the right address and they've moved, and that makes them to undertake action to change that. So that card, is it identified in the elector's name? In the voter's name? Yes, it is. The voter information card. Yes. Not the pamphlet that's sent to each address. And does the use of a QR code or something else is something that can be considered in the future, which would bring you to the Chief Electoral Officer website that will have the identification that would lead you to the BVA, BVO. But for QR codes, we have that in many communication products, so I'd be surprised if it wouldn't be in this one as well. Thank you.
So in your report, you highlight some initiatives that have were designed to increase voter participation, and probably were successful in doing that. Advanced polling, for example, voting by mail, special ballots, voting on campus, and 44% of electors voted ahead of time before voting day, which is a very big increase and shows enhanced voter participation. I would agree with that. But that leaves 56% of people voting on voting day. Do you feel that enough attention was had to making it convenient for voters on voting day? And I asked that question in the context of what happened in another neighboring riding, Cloverdale Langley City, where 90 to 100 polls were all in one location. big public building, very convenient for Elections Canada to be able to do that, but maybe not so convenient for voters, some of who had to drive further than they were accustomed to driving, and in a heavy traffic zone.
Yeah.
100 polls in one location. That's crazy.
Where was that? Where's this guy from? Was it from his riding?
No, he said it was a neighboring riding, Cloverdale Langley.
That's in BC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huge polling place.
That's insane.
And the problem is he was saying that forces everybody to drive down to this location,
Yeah.
causes traffic issues and everything like that.
Oh, for sure.
Election day would have been a disaster.
Right, and where is everybody going to park? And
yeah.
Yikes.
It's an important question. I'm always very attentive to the issue of proximity. For many voters, it's critical. And we have not, as we've seen over the last 25 years, voters migrate from ordinary poll to advanced polls. We have not reduced correspondingly the number of polling divisions at ordinary polls. So there are fewer voters today, way fewer, close to half, and I'll let Mr. O'Sell correct me here, but way fewer voters today per polling division than there were in the past. Now, this may or may not translate to more polling sites, because if you have a mega poll with 10 or 15 tables, then this may or may not, depending on the riding. If it's a suburban area with the local schools, you can easily have 10 tables and they're all neighboring. But there are circumstances where a large pool creates proximity problems. And so that is something that returning officers are well aware of. And they do strive to make the poll sites as accessible as possible. But as I said, the capacity to secure polling locations is increasingly difficult, and that's in some
even with
cases.
large numbers of public schools. I mean, I'm talking about a fairly urbanized riding.
Yes.
And there will be elementary and high schools all over the place.
Yes.
Why not use those more?
We would love to use all the schools. That would be fantastic.
So the provincial election teams, they work with the schools because it's provincial government, to essentially commandeer the schools during provincial elections. Now, I don't know why the federal government can't start working on the next election now and work with the different provinces to say, can we ask you guys to help us secure polling sites ahead of time?
So what it sounded like to me is that when it's a fixed election, like a fixed election date in October, they know like it's coming, and so they have better success getting things like schools and gyms and stuff like that. But when it's a snap election is when they have trouble.
But that's what I mean. Work with the provinces to be able to grant the federal government the ability to say, okay, snap elections called. These are our schools. Sorry, sucks to be you guys. You're not using your gym for the couple of days that they need it, right?
Well,
it's not like they're losing it for weeks on end.
Maybe the other option is that they extend the RIP period. Instead of being 5 to 7 weeks, maybe they make it 6 to 7 or 6 to 8. I don't know. Just kind of spitballing.
Dumb cat is climbing in the sink.
It's nice and cool in there.
Right.
My provincial counterparts in most provinces have a statutory right of access to schools. In Ontario, they don't even pay for the schools. That's not what I'm asking for. But they have that right, I don't. And it's education being provincial jurisdictions. We've seen a decline in the percentage of sites that are schools over the years. It went even lower during the pandemic and has gone back up. We're now at 22%, but it was significantly higher in the past. Schools are very convenient proximity places for electors. Unfortunately, parents are increasingly concerned about security or increasingly concerned about activities of their children that are planned at the school for the weekend. So that puts principals in a difficult situation, and in some cases they simply do not wish to have polls at the schools.
A follow-up question on voter participation. In the report you make the point that it improved substantially in this recent election, up to 69% voter participation, the highest, as you note, since 1993. But I did a quick research into voter turnout throughout Canadian history, And in 1958, the Diefenbaker landslide was 75%. And it stayed above 70% for a long time. Then it started to slip down, and now it's been a while since it's been above 70%. So I'm not usually a glass half empty person, but 69% means that 31% didn't vote. That's 9.8 million people. So what could be? So first of all, do you have that broken down into demographics, like who is voting and who is not voting? Is it older people not voting, younger people not voting?
We'll have that
Younger
information later on. We do not have it at this time, but it will be compiled. Some demographics, for example, are not as accurate. For example, ethno-linguistic communities, we don't have that data. Age, we do, right? So certainly we'll have more information on that. It is important to remind everyone that our mandate does not include promoting participation. That's the role of other players, including yourselves and your competitors. Our role is to make sure that services are available and that information is there for electors to exercise their right if they so wish to do. Now, of course, we're always happy to see high participation rate, but that's not something that we have a mandate to promote. We have to make sure that we can provide the services. And we saw in this election with a high turnout and a migration to advanced polls, the implication that this has for us. So when I speak of the turnout in my report and in my remarks, I'm looking at it largely from the angle of, can we meet that service demand? And as it shifts in time during the period, what are the implications for us to meet that mandate of offering services?
Ladies and gentlemen, the parliamentary page boy.
I think that's a dumb name.
What? Well, it's a dumb name for a dumb cat.
There you go. That
We always joke we love him very much, and he is absolutely spoiled rotten. But there's a trope online that orange cats are not so bright, and Pazuzu is a living example. Anyway, that was wild seeing stuff we were talking about in committee.
Right? And some wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more from Mr. Cooper to the Chief Electoral Officer.
Yeah, that was
interesting.
Yeah.
Peter Whitten for $10. This has been great. It reminds me of the good old days when I discovered Northern Perspective and the committee coverage that got me hooked damn near 3 years ago. Yeah. Well, it wasn't
Awesome.
3 years ago. It was
almost.
I guess
it was almost 3 years ago. Committee we started covering probably in the fall.
But 2.5 years ago,
Yeah.
probably. And Mega Man Zero, I was kind of chuckling at this for $5. I used my Canadian and French passports as ID at election. I'd believe Carney used his Irish and British ones, but not his Canadian one. So, but
that was wild.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we are now filled with anticipation as to the continuation of this saga in Proc. Looks like we're going to be following Proc a lot this fall.
I think so.
So that's going to be very, very interesting. Anyway, folks, it's getting a little late, but not as late as some of our live streams as some of our veterans would know. One of them, I think, went to 2 or 3 in the morning.
Yeah, it was crazy.
That was nuts. But that was a 3-hour meeting. Like, that was crazy.
Yeah. At least you have the time now to go through it and kind of filter out the excess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and AI is helpful for that. So we used AI to kind of get a sense of what the topics were and get away from some of these other questions, but didn't know exactly what they were saying. So that was something.
That was something to see, that because I don't think they could have gotten that anywhere else, because the whistleblower gave that information to us and we published it.
Yep.
Like, this is
and then we
wild.
went down the rabbit hole even further. Like, it was anyway.
It just goes to show that you can make change.
100%.
Absolutely, you can make change.
100%.
I hope something comes of this, but this is a great first step.
Anyway, folks, this is the first discussion about the election of 2025. This will not be the last at committee, so we will see where this goes.
And once the report is made available to the public, I'll let everybody know where they can find that. But I don't believe it's available to us yet.
So anyway, folks, thanks for joining us tonight. Lots of fun sharing this with you all. And our weekly live stream is still as scheduled on Sunday.
That's
so
right. I think we're going to try to do a little extra Q&A just for the few that we've skipped recently.
So we've had over, I think, almost 800 people sign up for the exclusive NP t-shirt giveaway that is going to be drawn this Sunday. You have until Saturday to ensure that you're signed up. One entry per household. So if somebody in your house has already entered, it's not going to let you do another one. And if you're having trouble, try to use a regular email address, or let's just say a common email address like Gmail or something like that. If you don't have one, create one for 4 days and sign up, because it doesn't seem like this one likes the exotic email addresses. And
like your Proton Mail and that kind of stuff.
Make sure you're not using a VPN because it thinks you're a bot. And make sure you allow the skill testing question to load before you start filling it in. So there's a couple of things in that.
And also, if you haven't done so already, please sign our petition against EV mandates. The link is in the description, and we are collecting signatures until October the 11th. So please, if you can, sign that petition. So I'm going to be taking a piece of the stream, probably when Cooper was talking about her stuff. Yeah, that was wild.
And packaging that up and dropping it tomorrow. Please give that a watch and a share. That would mean a lot to us. And we will see you in the comments tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen. But thank you, everybody. Have a good night, and we'll see you later.
Take care.